The Montana Territory stretched endless under a sky so wide it could swallow a man's prayers whole. In the summer of 1883, the land still remembered what it was before the rails came: wild, unbroken, belonging to no one and everyone at once. The Maddox Ranch sat in a valley where Cottonwood Creek bent around low hills, 160 acres of grass and water that 3 generations had worked into something like paradise. Cole Maddox had turned 22 that spring. His hands were calloused from fence wire and plow handles, his shoulders broad from throwing hay bales, his face weathered despite his youth. He had his father's jaw, strong and stubborn, and his mother's eyes, which saw more than most people wanted them to see. His older brother Ethan was 26, built like their father had been, tall and rangy, with a quiet intensity that made even drunk cowboys think twice before starting trouble. Where Cole was quick to smile, Ethan was measured. Where Cole dreamed of breeding better horses, Ethan dreamed of nothing but keeping what they had. Their mother, Catherine Maddox, was 53 and made of iron wrapped in worn calico. She'd buried a husband to typhoid, raised 2 sons alone through drought and hard winters, and never once asked for charity or bent her knee to any man. The ranch was hers by deed and blood, and she'd die before she gave it up. She would. The Northern Pacific Railway had other plans. Cole first heard about the railroad's expansion on a Tuesday in late June. He'd ridden into Silver Creek, the nearest town, to pick up supplies and sell 2 horses he'd broken for Old Man Henderson. The general store was buzzing with talk. "They're saying the spur line's coming through the valley," said Bill Garrett, the blacksmith, his voice carrying over the cracker barrels. "Straight shot from Billings to the mining camps west of here." "Whose valley?" someone asked. "Ours, Henderson's place. The Maddox spread. Maybe a dozen homesteads all told." Cole set down the saddle soap he'd been examining. "That land's already owned." Bill shrugged. "Railway's got government contracts. Eminent domain, they call it, means they can buy what they need. And if people don't want to sell?" The blacksmith's eyes flicked away. "Then I guess they make you want to." Cole bought his supplies in silence and rode home with a knot in his stomach that felt like swallowed barbed wire. Catherine Maddox listened to her son's report while kneading bread dough at the kitchen table. Her hands never stopped moving, pushing, and folding with the rhythm of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. "They can offer all they want," she said finally. "This land isn't for sale." "Ma, it's the railroad. They've got lawyers. They've got the law behind them." "The law," she repeated, and something sharp entered her voice. "Your grandfather fought in a war to keep this country whole. Your father broke his back turning sagebrush into pasture. This land has our sweat and our dead in it. I don't care what papers some men in suits wave around. It's ours." Ethan came in from the barn, dust on his shirt. "What's ours?" Cole told him. Ethan's face went still and hard. "When are they coming?" "Don't know that they are," Cole said. Catherine's hand stopped moving. She looked at her oldest son. "They're coming." She was right. The railroad's representatives arrived on a Thursday morning 2 weeks later, riding in a fancy carriage with an escort of 6 armed men. The lead negotiator was a man named Silas Barnhart, 45, with oiled hair and a suit that cost more than most families made in a year. His smile was practiced and empty. Catherine met them on the porch. Cole and Ethan stood behind her, both holding rifles, not aimed, but present. "Mrs. Maddox," Barnhart began, removing his hat with theatrical courtesy. "I represent the Northern Pacific Railway Company. I believe you've been informed of our development plans for this region." "I've heard talk." "Wonderful. Then you know we're prepared to make you a very generous offer for your property, far more than market value." Catherine folded her arms. "It's not for sale." Barnhart's smile never wavered. "I understand your attachment to the land, truly I do, but progress is coming to Montana, Mrs. Maddox. The railroad will bring commerce, opportunity, civilization itself. Surely you don't want to stand in the way of that." "What I want," Catherine said, her voice level and cold, "is for you to get off my porch." The smile finally cracked. Barnhart's eyes went flat. "Mrs. Maddox, I'm trying to be reasonable. The route has been surveyed and approved. The railroad is coming through this valley, whether you cooperate or not. Sell now, and you'll have enough money to buy land anywhere you choose. Refuse, and the courts will take it anyway. You'll get pennies on the dollar and a reputation as an obstructionist. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Cole stepped forward. My mother gave you her answer. Now get the hell off our land. One of the armed escorts, a thick-necked man with a deputy's badge pinned to his vest, put his hand on his pistol. Boy, you better watch your mouth. Ethan's rifle came up an inch. Just an inch. But every man there felt it. The tableau held for 3 heartbeats. Then Barnhart raised a hand. Gentlemen, please. There's no need for unpleasantness. He looked at Catherine. You have 1 week to reconsider. After that, I can't promise the offer will remain so generous. Good day. They left in their carriage, dust rising behind the wheels like smoke. Hush. The week passed in tense silence. Catherine went about her work with grim determination. Ethan began sleeping in the barn with a loaded shotgun. Cole rode into Silver Creek and asked around, trying to gauge whether other ranchers were selling. Most were. They offered me 3 times what this place is worth, Henderson said, wheezing around his pipe. I'm 72 years old. What am I going to do, fight the government? The Bakers sold. The Johnsons sold. The Carmichaels held out for 2 days before signing. Only the Maddox ranch remained. On the 8th day, they came back. But this time there was no carriage, no polite negotiation. Just a dozen men on horseback, led by the thick-necked deputy whose name was Frank Kellerman. He carried a document rolled in his fist like a club. Catherine walked out to meet them. Cole and Ethan emerged from the barn, this time with their rifles openly ready. Kellerman unrolled the paper. By order of the Montana Territorial Court, this property has been seized under eminent domain for use by the Northern Pacific Railway Company. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. That's a lie, Catherine said. There's been no court hearing. There was. You didn't show up. Because we were never notified. Kellerman shrugged. Not my problem, 24 hours. And if we refuse? Then I come back with federal marshals and you leave in chains. He leaned forward in his saddle. Or in boxes. Your choice. Cole felt his finger tighten on the trigger, felt Ethan go rigid beside him, but Catherine's voice cut through the rage. Boys don't. Kellerman smiled. Smart woman. Smarter than her sons, at least. He tipped his hat in mock salute and turned his horse. They watched the riders disappear over the hill. That night, the Maddox family sat around the kitchen table in the lamplight. Catherine's hands were folded in front of her, still for the first time Cole could remember. We're not leaving, she said quietly. Ma, Cole began. We're not leaving. This is our land. They have no right. Ethan's voice was careful. They have guns and badges. That makes it right in their eyes. Then their eyes are blind. Catherine looked at her sons. Your father and I built this place from nothing. We lost a daughter to scarlet fever in that bedroom upstairs. We buried her under the oak tree by the creek. This isn't just land. It's who we are. Cole felt something break open in his chest. So what do we do? Catherine stood. We stay, and we make them drag us out if they dare. They came at dawn. Cole was in the barn feeding the horses when he heard the thunder of hooves. He ran to the house, but Ethan was already there, rifle in hand, peering through the window. How many? 20, maybe more. Kellerman was back, but this time he'd brought an army. Federal marshals, railroad security, hired guns who didn't bother hiding what they were. They formed a semicircle around the house, weapons drawn. Catherine stepped onto the porch. She held no weapon. She wore her Sunday dress. Mrs. Maddox, Kellerman called. Your time's up. Come out peacefully and we'll escort you to town. You can stay at the hotel until you find other arrangements. This is my home, Catherine said. I'm not leaving. Then you're under arrest for trespassing on railroad property. This isn't railroad property. The court says different. Cole watched from the window, his heart hammering, Ethan beside him, breathing hard through his nose. Kellerman made a gesture. 4 men dismounted and started toward the porch. Catherine didn't move. Ma, Cole whispered. Ma, get inside. But she just stood there, spine straight, chin up. The men reached the steps. One of them, a lean gunman with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, grabbed Catherine's arm. Let's go, lady. She jerked away. Don't touch me. He grabbed harder, yanked her forward. Catherine stumbled, caught herself on the railing. Cole was moving before he thought. The door banged open and he was on the porch, shoving the gunman backward. "Get your goddamn hands off her!" The man went for his pistol. The shot seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Cole felt the impact before he heard the sound. A sledgehammer blow to his left shoulder that spun him halfway around. He hit the porch boards, the world tilting, pain blooming white-hot through his arm and chest. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard his mother screaming, heard Ethan roaring from inside the house, heard Kellerman shouting, "Hold fire! Hold fire!" But the scarred gunman wasn't listening. He stood over Cole with his pistol raised, and the look in his eyes was the look of a man about to finish what he'd started. Catherine threw herself between them. "No, please, he's my son. He's—" The second shot was quieter than the first, almost polite. Catherine Maddox jerked once, like she'd been startled. Her hand went to her chest. She looked down at the blood spreading across the blue fabric of her dress, and her expression was one of pure confusion. "Oh," she said softly. Then her knees buckled. Cole caught her as she fell, his wounded shoulder screaming, blood mixing with blood. He cradled his mother's head in his lap, watching the light in her eyes stutter and dim. Ma, no, 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 no." Her lips moved. He bent close. "Run," she whispered. Then she was gone. The next moments came in fragments, like a dream remembered badly. Ethan exploding from the house, rifle blazing, men scattering, horses rearing, Kellerman screaming orders, the scarred gunman turning, raising his pistol toward Ethan, and Cole, moving on instinct, snatching the dead man's fallen revolver and firing, the recoil jolting his ruined shoulder, seeing the scarred man's head snap back in a spray of red. Ethan grabbing him, hauling him upright. "Cole, move!" Bullets chewing into the porch, the world spinning. Cole's boots slipping in his mother's blood as Ethan dragged him backward into the house. They burst out the back door as the front windows exploded in gunfire. Ran for the barn. Cole's vision graying at the edges, his legs barely working. Ethan threw him onto a horse, vaulted onto another. They rode. Behind them, the house they'd grown up in erupted in flames. Kellerman's men torched it, removing the evidence, erasing the crime. Cole looked back once, saw smoke rising into the dawn sky, saw everything he'd ever known burning. Then the valley swallowed them, and there was only the thunder of hooves and the taste of ash, and the knowledge that the boy he'd been had died on that porch beside his mother. What rode into the wilderness wasn't a farmer anymore. It was something the frontier would learn to fear. They rode for 3 days straight, pushing the horses to the edge of collapse. Ethan knew the backcountry, old mining trails and forgotten paths that didn't appear on any railroad survey map. They climbed into the high timber, where the air grew thin and cold, where civilization was just a rumor carried on the wind. On the 4th day, in a cave overlooking a nameless valley, Ethan finally let them stop. Cole's shoulder was infected. The bullet had punched clean through, but the wound was angry and seeping. Ethan cleaned it with whiskey that made Cole scream into his own fist, then packed it with moss and bound it tight. "You killed a man," Ethan said while he worked. Cole stared at the cave ceiling. "I know. They'll call it murder. It was—" Cole's voice broke. "He shot Ma. Doesn't matter what it was, matters what they'll call it." They sat in silence while the wind howled outside. Finally, Cole spoke. "What do we do?" Ethan was quiet for a long time. When he answered, his voice was different, harder, like something inside him had calcified. "We survive. And when we're strong enough," he looked at his younger brother, "we make them pay." The Montana newspapers told the story differently. Ranchers resist lawful seizure. Violence erupts. Deputy Marshal killed in shootout with land squatters. The Helena Daily Record painted Catherine Maddox as a deranged woman who'd fired on federal officers. Cole and Ethan were described as dangerous outlaws who'd murdered a lawman in cold blood before burning their own home to destroy evidence. There was no mention of the railroad, no mention of stolen land, no mention of who fired first. Silas Barnhart gave a statement expressing his deep sorrow at the tragedy and his hope that the fugitives would be brought to justice swiftly. The bounty was set at $500 each, dead or alive. In the cave, Cole's fever broke on the 6th day. He woke to find Ethan sitting at the cave mouth, staring out at the valley below. "How long?" Cole's voice was a croak. "Almost a week." Cole tried to sit up. His shoulder protested but held. "We can't stay here." "No. They'll be hunting us." "They already are." Ethan tossed a crumpled newspaper at him. Cole read it, his jaw tightening with every line. "They're lying. Of course they're lying. They own the newspapers same as they own the courts." Ethan turned to face him. "You understand what this means? We can't go back. Can't clear our names. Can't trust the law. As far as the world knows, we're murderers." Cole crumpled the paper in his fist. "So what? We just hide up here until we die?" "No." Ethan's eyes were chips of flint. "We become what they say we are." Well, the transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened in increments, in choices made and lines crossed, in the slow erosion of everything they'd believed about justice and right. They started small, hit a railroad payroll wagon heading to a work camp, took enough money to buy better horses and supplies, left the guards tied up but unharmed. Then they struck a supply depot, destroying surveying equipment and burning bridge timbers that would have crossed Cottonwood Creek, the creek their mother was buried beside. Each raid was precision and fury balanced on a knife's edge. Ethan planned, Cole executed, and slowly, reluctantly, they got good at it. News spread through the frontier like wildfire. The Maddox brothers. Ghosts who struck at the iron beast itself, who robbed the railroad blind and vanished into the wilderness. Some called them outlaws, others called them heroes. To the railroad, they were a plague that needed to be eradicated. Well, 6 months after their mother's murder, Cole and Ethan hit the Northern Pacific Depot in Carterville. It was supposed to be simple: steal the strongbox, distribute the money to families who'd been displaced, disappear before dawn. But Frank Kellerman was waiting. The ambush came as they loaded the strongbox onto their pack horse. Gunfire erupted from 3 sides. Cole took a round through his thigh, went down hard. Ethan returned fire. Bought them seconds. They made it to their horses, Cole's legs streaming blood, and rode into the darkness with 20 men on their trail. They lost them in a box canyon, doubling back through a creek to kill their scent, but Cole was fading fast. Ethan found a homesteader's abandoned shack and kicked in the door. "This is bad," Ethan said, examining the wound by lamplight. "Bullets still in there." Cole's teeth were chattering. "Dig it out." "I'm not a doctor." "Then I guess we'll find out if I'm lucky." Ethan heated his knife in the lamp flame. Cole bit down on a leather belt. The surgery was brutal and amateur, but Ethan found the bullet and got it out. Cole passed out halfway through and woke to dawn light, and his brother slumped against the wall, exhausted. "Still alive?" Ethan asked. "Unfortunately. Railroads put out a new bounty, 1,000 each now." Cole laughed, then winced. "We're moving up in the world." But there was no humor in either of their voices. Sutton. Winter came hard that year. Cole's leg healed crooked, leaving him with a slight limp. They holed up in an old trapper's cabin high in the Absaroka Range, watching snow bury the world. One night, huddled around a fire that barely pushed back the cold, Ethan spoke the thing they'd both been thinking. "We can't do this forever." Cole poked at the fire. "I know. Every job gets harder, every escape narrower. Eventually our luck runs out." "So what are you saying? We give up?" Ethan shook his head. "I'm saying we make it count. One big score. Something that hurts them bad enough they feel it. Then we disappear, change our names, go to California, Mexico, somewhere they can't reach." Cole was quiet for a long time. "What kind of score?" "The kind that makes them remember why they shouldn't have fucked with the Maddox family." They spent the winter planning. Ethan had heard rumors of a major payroll shipment, money for all the Northern Pacific workers from Billings to Butte. $100,000, moving by armored train in early spring. It was insane. Impossible. Exactly the kind of thing the railroad would never expect. "We'll need help," Cole said, studying the map Ethan had drawn. "Can't take a train with just 2 guns." I know some people, miners who got displaced, ranchers who lost everything, men with reasons to hate the railroad as much as we do. Over the next months, Ethan assembled a crew, 8 men total, each one carrying a grudge. Jack Holloway, former ranch hand who'd watched the railroad run over his boss's land. Dead shot with a rifle. Samuel Sam Cross, blacksmith from Silver Creek, his shop seized for development, strong as an ox. Miguel Torres, Mexican vaquero who'd seen his family's land grant declared invalid by territorial courts, quick and fearless. And Bustins. Thomas Birch, ex-soldier, dishonorably discharged for questioning orders, new explosives. Raymond Polk, gambler with debts to the railroad, owed them pain. James Jim Cartwright, farmer whose daughter had been killed in a railroad construction accident. The company called it collateral damage. And then there was Lena Cross, Sam's younger sister, 23, with auburn hair and eyes that saw through lies. She ran a boarding house in Silver Creek and had been quietly sheltering displaced families. When she learned what they were planning, she insisted on helping. "You'll need someone in town," she said. "Someone who can watch the depot, track the shipment schedule, get you information without raising suspicion." Cole met her during a planning session at Sam's place. The moment their eyes locked, something shifted in the air. She didn't look at him like an outlaw. She looked at him like a man. "This is dangerous," he told her. "So is watching good people starve while rich men get richer." She held his gaze. "I'm in." Against his better judgment, Cole agreed. Over the next weeks, as they refined the plan, Cole found excuses to ride into Silver Creek, to check on details, to confirm schedules, to see Lena. They talked in the boarding house kitchen after midnight when the world was asleep. She told him about her childhood, about her father who died in the mines, about dreams of running a real hotel someday. He told her about the ranch, about his mother, about the life he'd lost. "Do you regret it?" she asked one night. "Fighting back?" Cole considered. "I regret that it was necessary. But no, they needed to be fought. Even if it costs you everything? They already took everything. Now I'm just making sure they pay the bill." Lena reached across the table and took his hand. Her palm was warm. "What happens after?" she asked. "After your big score?" "I don't know, never thought that far ahead." "Maybe you should start." The train was scheduled for April 15th. They had 3 weeks to get ready. Ethan chose a location 10 miles outside Carterville, where the track curved through a narrow canyon. Thomas Birch would blow the rails just as the engine rounded the bend. Not enough to derail it, just enough to stop it. The crew would hit fast, secure the guards, blast the strongbox, load the money, and scatter before reinforcements arrived. 20 minutes. That's all they'd have. The night before the job, Cole couldn't sleep. He stood outside the hideout, watching stars wheel overhead, thinking about his mother, about the porch boards soaked in her blood, about the house burning. Ethan joined him. "Tomorrow changes everything," the older brother said. "Or ends everything." "You scared?" Cole thought about it. Not of dying, of failing. Ethan clasped his shoulder, the one that didn't have a bullet scar. "We won't fail. And after tomorrow, we're done. We disappear. We get to live." Cole wanted to believe him. April 15th dawned clear and cold. They took their positions hours before the train was due. Thomas Birch placed his charges with surgical precision. Jack Holloway found high ground with his rifle. The others spread out along the canyon, waiting. Cole and Ethan stood by the horses, checking weapons, checking each other. "Whatever happens," Ethan said, "we stick together." "Always." The train appeared at 11:47 a.m., belching smoke and grinding steel, an iron serpent carrying the railroad's lifeblood. Birch triggered the explosives. The world became sound and fury. Rails twisted. The engine shrieked, brakes screaming, momentum fighting physics. The train shuddered to a halt exactly where they'd planned. "Go!" Ethan shouted. They swarmed the train like ants on a carcass. The guards inside were prepared, but not for this level of coordination. Gunfire cracked. Miguel took a round through the arm, but kept moving. Sam battered down the strongbox car door with a sledgehammer. Cole vaulted into the car, pistol raised. and froze. The strongbox was there, but so was Frank Kellerman. The deputy marshal smiled from behind a rifle barrel. "Hello, boys. Been expecting you." Yes. The trap was perfect. A dozen men emerged from hiding places throughout the train. More appeared on the canyon rim. The Maddox crew was caught in a kill box. "Drop your weapons," Kellerman commanded. "Do it now, or everyone dies." Cole's mind raced. Ethan beside him, calculating angles, finding no good ones. "How?" Ethan asked. "Your little spy in Silver Creek." Kellerman's smile widened. "Miss Cross was very helpful, though I don't think she knew what she was helping with." Cole's blood turned to ice. "You're lying." "Am I? Who do you think's been feeding us your location all these months? Who knew exactly when and where you'd be today?" "No." But even as Cole said it, doubt crept in. The ambush in Carterville, the close calls that got closer, the raids that seemed to find resistance where there should have been none. Kellerman saw the realization dawn. "Oh, she didn't mean to betray you. We just encouraged her cooperation, threatened to shut down her boarding house, arrest her brother for harboring fugitives. People talk when you squeeze them right." Rage erupted in Cole's chest. He raised his pistol. Kellerman's rifle never wavered. "You fire that, you die. So does everyone here. Is that what you want?" "Cole," Ethan said quietly. "Don't." The moment stretched. Cole's finger on the trigger, Kellerman's smile mocking him. Then, from the canyon rim, Jack Holloway's rifle spoke. One shot. Clean. Kellerman's rifle exploded into splinters. Chaos erupted. The Maddox crew scattered, returning fire, using the train for cover. Miguel pulled Sam behind a wheel. Raymond grabbed the horses. Thomas detonated a secondary charge that collapsed part of the canyon wall, blocking reinforcements. Cole and Ethan ran. Bullets chased them. Men shouted. Horses screamed. They made it to their mounts and rode like the devil himself was on their heels. Behind them, the canyon became a war zone. But they couldn't think about that. Could only ride and hope the others made it out. They didn't stop until nightfall. The rendezvous point was an old mine shaft 20 miles north. They'd agreed. If the job went bad, everyone would meet there within 24 hours. Cole and Ethan waited. Jack Holloway arrived at sunset, bleeding from a shoulder wound but alive. Miguel and Thomas came in after midnight. That was all. Sam Cross was dead, shot trying to cover their escape. Raymond Polk was captured, likely already hanged. Jim Cartwright hadn't made it out of the canyon. 4 men gone. The score a total failure. And the noose tightening around them all. Ethan slumped against the mine wall, defeat etched into every line of his face. Cole couldn't stop thinking about Lena. Had she really betrayed them? Or had Kellerman forced her hand? Did it matter? "What now?" Miguel asked, his arm crudely bandaged. Ethan looked at his brother. Cole looked at the darkness beyond the mine entrance. "Now," Cole said, his voice hollow. "We become ghosts." They split up. Jack headed east toward the Dakota Territory. Miguel and Thomas went south into Wyoming. They changed their names, their lives, tried to disappear into the vast American frontier. Cole and Ethan went west. For weeks they drifted, avoiding towns, living on what they could hunt. The bounty on their heads had tripled. Wanted posters appeared in every settlement, their faces sketched from memory but recognizable enough. They were running out of places to run. One night, camped in a grove of aspens, Ethan finally spoke what they'd both been thinking. "I'm tired, Cole." "I know. Tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of being hunted." Cole poked at the fire. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we got it wrong. Maybe revenge isn't worth dying for." "They killed Ma. And killing them won't bring her back." Ethan's voice cracked. I want to stop. I want to live somewhere quiet, work with my hands, not have to wonder if every stranger is a bounty hunter." Cole had no answer, because he wanted the same thing. But the world they'd created, the legend of the Maddox brothers, wouldn't let them stop. The choice had been made for them the day they rode away from their burning home. They were camped near the town of Red Bluff when Cole made his decision. "I need to see her," he told Ethan. "Who?" "Lena." Ethan stared at him. "Are you insane? She sold us out." "Maybe. Or maybe Kellerman lied to divide us. Either way, I need to know. Cole, you said you wanted to stop. So do I. But I can't stop wondering. Can't stop thinking about her. Cole met his brother's eyes. I have to know the truth. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. You always were the stubborn one. Cole rode into Silver Creek on a moonless night in early May. He left his horse outside town and approached the boarding house on foot, moving through shadows, a ghost in his own story. The back door was unlocked. He slipped inside, climbed the stairs, found Lena's room. She was awake, sitting by the window, looking out at the darkened street. She didn't scream when he stepped from the shadows, just turned slowly, her face pale. Cole, tell me the truth, he said. Did you betray us? Tears welled in her eyes. They came to me. Kellerman and his men. They said if I didn't help them, they'd arrest Sam for murder. Said they'd found evidence he'd killed a railroad guard. It was a lie, but they had papers, witnesses. She covered her mouth. I didn't know what to do. So you told them about the train? No, I never... She stopped. I told them I'd overheard you and Sam talking about a job. That's all. I didn't know when or where. I swear. But Kellerman knew exactly when we'd be there. Then he got it from someone else. Or he was watching the shipments, waiting. Lena stood, walked to him. Cole, I would never intentionally hurt you. I tried to warn you. I sent a message to the hideout, but we never got it. I know. I found out later that the messenger was intercepted. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry about Sam, about everything. Cole wanted to rage at her, wanted to blame someone for the catastrophe, but looking into her eyes, he saw only pain and truth. She hadn't betrayed them. The railroad had just been smarter than they'd given it credit for. They're still hunting us, he said quietly. I know. Bounty's up to 5,000. I know that too. You should turn me in. Money like that could change your life. Lena slapped him. The crack echoed in the small room. Don't you dare, she hissed. Don't you dare stand in my room and insult me like that. Cole touched his stinging cheek. Then, without thinking, he pulled her into his arms. She held him like he was the only solid thing in a world coming apart. I can't keep running, he whispered into her hair. Then stop. They'll hang me. Not if you surrender on your own terms. He pulled back. What? Lena's eyes were fierce. There's talk. Some of the territory governors are pushing for amnesty programs. Get outlaws to lay down arms in exchange for reduced sentences. It's not perfect, but I'd still go to prison. For a few years, not forever. And when you got out, she cupped his face. I'd wait. Cole's heart cracked open. Lena, I love you, she said simply. I've loved you since the first night you sat in my kitchen and told me the truth about who you were. I don't care that you're wanted. I don't care that the world calls you an outlaw. I care that you're a good man trying to survive in a broken system. No one had called him a good man in a very long time. Cole kissed her. And for a moment, in that small room in a frontier town, the weight lifted. For a moment, he could imagine a different life, a different ending. Then gunfire shattered the night. Lena jerked back from Cole's arms, her eyes wide with alarm. The gunshots came rapid and close, shattering windows downstairs, splintering wood. Voices shouted in the street, harsh commands mixed with the thunder of boots on boardwalks. They found you, Lena breathed, her face draining of color. Cole was already moving, grabbing his gun belt from where he'd set it on her dresser. Back window. How far's the drop? 10 feet. There's an awning below. She grabbed his arm. Cole, wait. No time. He kissed her hard, tasting salt from her tears. I'll come back for you. I swear it. Then he was through the window, dropping into darkness just as the boarding house door exploded inward below. He hit the awning, rolled, crashed into the alley dirt. Pain shot through his bad leg, but he forced himself up, limping toward where he'd left his horse. Behind him, men poured into the building. He heard Lena's voice, high and indignant, claiming she was alone, that she'd heard nothing, buying him seconds. Cole reached his horse, vaulted into the saddle despite his screaming leg, and rode. Bullets whined past his head. Someone was shooting from a rooftop. He ducked low, drove his heels into the horse's flanks, and the animal surged forward into the night. The town fell away behind him. He rode hard for an hour before circling back through the hills to the aspen grove where he'd left Ethan. His brother was already mounted, rifle across his saddle, face grim in the starlight. "Heard the shots," Ethan said. "What happened?" "Ambush. They were waiting." "She set you up?" "No." Cole's voice was sharp. "She didn't. But someone saw me go in." He met Ethan's eyes. "We need to leave Montana. Tonight." Ethan studied his younger brother for a long moment, reading things in Cole's face that went beyond words. Then he nodded. "Wyoming?" "Farther. California, maybe. Somewhere they don't know our faces." They rode south through the remainder of that night and all the next day, pushing their horses to exhaustion, switching to stolen mounts at an abandoned ranch, moving like men with hell snapping at their heels. Because hell was coming. Cole could feel it in his bones. 3 days later, they rendezvoused with Jack Holloway at a trading post near the Wyoming border. The former ranch hand looked haggard. His shoulder wound barely healed, but his eyes were sharp. "You boys here?" Jack asked, sliding a folded newspaper across the scarred table. The headline made Cole's blood run cold. "Territorial Governor announces amnesty program. Outlaws who surrender peacefully may receive reduced sentences." Ethan read over his shoulder, his breath catching. The article outlined a new initiative. Territorial governors across Montana, Wyoming, and Dakota were offering deals to wanted men. Turn yourself in, testify about your crimes, accept punishment, and avoid the noose. It was exactly what Lena had told him about. "It's a trap," Jack said flatly. "Has to be." "Maybe," Ethan murmured. "Or maybe it's a way out." Cole's hands tightened on the newspaper. The words swam before his eyes. Reduced sentences, a chance to stop running, a possibility, however slim, of a future. With Lena. "You're actually considering this," Jack said, disbelief coloring his voice. "After everything they've done. After the lies, the murder, What's the alternative?" While Ethan cut him off. "Run until we're too old to ride? Die in some nameless gulch with bounty hunters standing over us? Better than a rope." "Is it?" Ethan's voice was quiet but intense. "I'm tired, Jack. Tired in my soul. And I think Cole is too." They both looked at the younger Maddox. Cole stared at the newspaper, his jaw working, something enormous warring behind his eyes. "If we surrender," he said slowly, "we do it smart, public, in front of witnesses, newspapers. Make it so they can't just shoot us and call it justice." "That's still a lot of faith in a system that's been lying about us for 2 years, Jack pointed out. "I know." Cole looked up. "But I met someone. Someone who makes me think maybe there's a reason to try." Understanding dawned on Ethan's face. Jack just shook his head. "Your funeral," the rifleman said. Then more gently, "But if you're doing this, do it right. Get a lawyer first, someone who can negotiate terms before you walk into a jail cell." It was solid advice. Cole nodded slowly. Ethan reached across the table and gripped his brother's forearm. "We do this together, like everything else." "Together," Cole agreed. They shook on it, two brothers who'd lost everything and might be about to lose even more, gambling their lives on the word of politicians and the fragile hope that somewhere in the corrupt machinery of frontier justice there might still be a scrap of honor. They were wrong, but they wouldn't know that for another 3 weeks. The lawyer they found was named Augustus Webb, a thin man of 50 with spectacles that perpetually slid down his nose and a reputation for taking cases no one else would touch. He practiced out of a cramped office in Cheyenne, Wyoming, surrounded by law books and the smell of old paper. "The Maddox brothers," he said when they walked in, his eyes widening slightly. "I'd heard you were dead." "Not yet," Cole said. Webb listened to their story, the real story, not the railroad's version. He took notes in cramped handwriting, asked pointed questions, and finally sat back with a sigh. "You understand that even with amnesty, you're looking at prison time," he said. "The murdered deputy marshal, the train robberies, the property destruction, those are serious charges." "How much time?" Ethan asked. 5 years minimum, Possibly 10. Cole's stomach dropped. 10 years. He'd be 32 when he got out. Lena would be 33. Would she really wait that long? But you'd be alive, Webb continued. And the alternative is a noose or a bullet. Those are your choices, gentlemen. What do we need to do? Cole asked. Webb outlined the process. They'd surrender publicly in Cheyenne, in front of the territorial marshal and representatives from the governor's office. Webb would negotiate the specific terms beforehand. No death penalty, a fair trial, testimony in open court. The whole thing would be documented, witnessed, made official. It'll take me 2 weeks to arrange, Webb said. Maybe 3. Can you stay hidden that long? We've stayed hidden for 2 years, Ethan said. 3 more weeks won't kill us. Again, they were wrong. The hideout Jack found was an old shepherd's cabin in the Laramie Range, so remote that eagles were the only visitors. Cole and Ethan settled in to wait, their lives compressed into a strange limbo between outlaw and prisoner, between running and surrender. Cole spent hours staring at the mountains, thinking about Lena. He'd sent her a letter through Jack, just a few lines saying he was alive, that he was trying to fix things, that she should wait for him. He had no idea if she'd received it, no idea if she'd even want to wait. The doubt gnawed at him like a rat in the walls. Ethan, meanwhile, grew quieter each day. He carved small figures from pine wood, horses mostly, their lines simple but graceful. It was something their father had taught them as boys, a way to calm restless hands. You think Ma would approve? Ethan asked one evening, holding up a half-finished carving. Of us surrendering, I mean. Cole considered. I think she'd want us to live, however we can manage it. Even in a cage? Better a cage than a grave. Ethan set down the carving. You really love her, don't you? The cross woman. Cole didn't need to ask who he meant. Yeah, I do. That's good. Ethan's voice was soft. Everyone should have something worth living for, even outlaws. They lapsed into silence, watching the sun paint the peaks gold and crimson, 2 brothers on the edge of everything, waiting for a future they couldn't quite believe in, but desperately needed. The message came on the 18th day. Jack rode in hard, his horse lathered, his face ashen. He threw himself from the saddle and stumbled toward the cabin. It's a trap, he gasped. The whole goddamn thing is a trap. Cole's blood turned to ice. What are you talking about? Jack pulled a crumpled telegram from his coat. I've got a contact in Cheyenne, works at the telegraph office. She copied this for me before it went out. The telegram was addressed to Frank Kellerman. It read, Maddox Brothers planning surrender. Stop terms being negotiated. Stop. Coordinate with Cheyenne Marshal for reception. Stop. Ensure no witnesses survive. Stop. The sender was Silas Barnhart. Ethan read it twice, his face going pale, then flushing with rage. That son of a bitch. Webb sold us out. Or Barnhart got to him, Jack said. Doesn't matter which. Point is, you walk into that surrender and you're dead men. Cole felt something break inside him. The last fragile thread of hope that the system might actually work, that justice might actually exist. It snapped cleanly, and what rushed in to fill the void was cold and hard and utterly unforgiving. We were fools to think they'd let us live, he said quietly. So what now? Ethan asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Cole looked at his brother, then at Jack. Now we stop playing their game. We make our own rules. Meaning? Meaning we hit them, hard, where it hurts most. Cole's eyes were chips of flint. We make them bleed. The plan came together over the next 2 days, fueled by rage and bitter clarity. If the railroad wanted war, Cole and Ethan would give them war. But not like before. Not small raids and petty theft. This time they'd strike at the heart of the beast itself. Northern Pacific was holding a massive land auction in Helena, selling off thousands of acres they'd seized through eminent domain to wealthy investors from back east. The auction was scheduled for 3 weeks out, and it would be attended by every major railroad executive in the territory, including Silas Barnhart. We burn it down, Cole said, spreading a hand-drawn map across the cabin table. The auction house, the land office, every record they've got of who owns what. Set them back years. People will be inside, Jack pointed out. Not if we time it right. Auction's at noon. We hit at dawn, when the building's empty. Set charges, light the fuse, disappear before anyone knows we're there. Ethan studied the map. We'll need help. More than just the three of us. Miguel and Thomas, Cole said. They're in Laramie. We get word to them. And if they say no, then we do it ourselves. But Miguel and Thomas didn't say no. When Jack rode to Laramie with the proposal, both men agreed immediately. Miguel's wounded arm had healed badly, leaving him with limited use of his left hand, but his spirit was unbroken. Thomas, the explosives expert, had been working as a miner and had access to dynamite. We're with you, Miguel said when they all met in a canyon outside Helena. Until the end. This might be the end, Ethan warned. Thomas grinned, a flash of white teeth in his soot-darkened face. Then, let's make it count. They spent a week preparing. Thomas mixed his charges with the precision of a chemist, calculating exactly how much explosive would bring down the building without endangering surrounding structures. They studied the auction house's layout, mapped guard rotations, identified escape routes. And Cole wrote a letter. It was addressed to every newspaper in Montana to be delivered the morning of the fire. In it, he laid out everything. The truth about how the railroad had murdered Catherine Maddox, how they'd framed her sons, how they'd stolen land and bought courts and crushed anyone who stood in their way. He named names, Barnhart, Kellerman, corrupt judges, paid-off marshals. They'll call it the ravings of a desperate criminal, Ethan said, reading over his shoulder. Probably, Cole agreed, but some people will believe it, and that's enough. The night before the strike, they camped in the hills overlooking Helena. The city sprawled below them, a constellation of lamplight in the darkness, unaware of what morning would bring. Cole couldn't sleep. He sat apart from the others, staring at the stars, thinking about Lena, wondering if he'd ever see her again, wondering if this was how legends were born, in desperation and fury, and the refusal to be erased. Ethan found him there. Second thoughts? The older brother asked. 100th thoughts, maybe. Cole glanced at him. You? Every minute. Ethan sat down beside him. But I'm done running, Cole. Done hiding. If we're going out, we go out fighting. We might not go out at all. Could pull this off clean. You believe that? No, Cole admitted, but I'm trying to. They sat in silence for a while, two brothers under an infinite sky, carrying the weight of everything they'd lost and everything they were about to risk. When this is over, Ethan said quietly, if we survive, you find that woman. You build the life Ma would have wanted for you. What about you? Ethan smiled, sad and distant. I'll figure something out. Maybe head to California like we always talked about. Find some quiet town where nobody knows my name. Work with horses. Get old. He shook his head. Probably won't happen, but it's nice to think about. Cole gripped his brother's shoulder. It'll happen. We'll make it happen. Ethan didn't answer. He just looked at the stars, and his silence spoke volumes. Dawn came cold and gray, mist rising from the valleys like the breath of ghosts. The crew moved through Helena's outskirts like shadows, leading horses on foot to muffle the sound, their faces grim with purpose. The auction house was a two-story brick building on the edge of the business district, imposing and new, built with money stolen from people like the Maddoxes. A single guard stood at the front entrance, smoking a cigarette, bored. Thomas circled to the rear. Miguel and Jack took positions across the street. Cole and Ethan approached from different angles, converging on the guard. It was Ethan who stepped from the alley first, pistol raised. Not a sound, he said quietly. The guard's cigarette fell from his lips. His hand twitched toward his gun. Cole emerged behind him, pressing a revolver to the man's spine. Don't. They tied him up, gagged him, left him in the alley where he wouldn't be hurt by what came next. Then Thomas went to work. He placed charges at structural points throughout the building, load-bearing columns, supporting walls, the foundation itself. The dynamite was wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from moisture, wired together with expert precision. Thomas moved with the calm efficiency of a man who'd done this 100 times. While he worked, Cole and Ethan searched the offices upstairs. They found exactly what they'd hoped for, filing cabinets full of land deeds, ownership transfers, seizure orders. Every piece of paper that gave the railroad false legitimacy. "Burn it all," Cole said. They piled documents in the center of the main auction hall, doused them with kerosene from the building's lamps. The smell was acrid and harsh. Ethan struck a match, held it up. "For Ma," he said. "For Ma," Cole echoed. The match fell. Flames erupted, hungry and bright, consuming years of theft and lies in seconds. They fled downstairs as the fire spread. Thomas was waiting with his detonator, a crude device of wire and battery that would trigger the charges remotely. "Everyone clear?" he asked. Cole did a head count. Miguel, Jack, Ethan, himself. "Clear." They ran. A block away, crouched behind a water trough, Thomas pressed the detonator. The world became light and sound. The explosion wasn't massive. Thomas had calibrated it carefully, but it was devastating. The auction house's walls blew outward in a shower of brick and timber. The roof collapsed inward. Fire consumed what remained, flames leaping 50 feet into the morning air. Within minutes, bells were ringing across Helena. People poured into the streets. Bucket brigades formed, though everyone could see it was hopeless. The building was gone, and with it, every record of the railroad's territorial land claims. The crew slipped away in the chaos, mounting their horses at a prearranged location and riding south before anyone thought to look for them. They made it 10 miles before the pursuit began. Cole heard them first, the distant thunder of many horses moving fast. He twisted in his saddle, saw dust rising from the road behind them. "Company," he called. Ethan looked back, swore viciously. "How many?" 20, maybe more. They mobilized fast. Probably had men stationed all over town after the telegram leak. Cole drove his heels into his horse's flanks. "Ride!" They rode hard, the horses straining, foam flecking their necks. But the pursuers were fresh, well-mounted, and closing fast. Gunfire cracked behind them. A bullet whined past Cole's ear. "We can't outrun them," Jack shouted. "Split up," Ethan yelled back. "Divide their forces." It was the right tactical call, but the wrong emotional one. They'd sworn to stay together. But survival trumped sentiment. At a fork in the trail, Miguel and Thomas peeled off east. Jack went north. That left Cole and Ethan racing south, with a dozen riders still on their trail. The land grew rougher, rocky hills giving way to badlands, all twisted stone and hidden arroyos. Ethan led them into a maze of canyons, trying to lose their pursuers in the labyrinth. For a while it worked. The pursuit fell back, confused by the many branching paths. Cole and Ethan dismounted in a narrow defile, catching their breath, listening. "Think we lost them?" Cole panted. Ethan shook his head. "They'll bring in trackers, Indian scouts maybe. We've got a few hours at best. So we keep moving. Or we make a stand." Cole looked at his brother sharply. "That's suicide." "So is running forever." Ethan's face was calm, almost peaceful. "I'm tired, Cole. Tired of being hunted. Tired of looking over my shoulder." He met his younger brother's eyes. "I'm done." "Don't talk like that. We've been in worse spots." "Have we?" Ethan smiled sadly. "Name one." Cole opened his mouth, closed it, because his brother was right. Every escape had been narrower than the last, every raid riskier. They'd been living on borrowed time for 2 years, and the debt was coming due. "Listen to me," Ethan said, gripping Cole's shoulders. "You still have a chance. That woman, Lena, she's your way out. Not prison, not amnesty. Her love. A real life. I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are." Ethan's voice was firm. "Because one of us has to survive this. One of us has to make it mean something." He pulled Cole into a fierce embrace. "Go to California. Change your name. Marry her. Have kids. Grow old. Be the man Ma raised you to be." "Ethan, I'll hold them here. Give you time to get clear." Cole jerked back. No, we fight together or we don't fight at all. We've been fighting together for 2 years and look where it got us." Ethan's eyes were bright, almost fevered. "This is my choice, little brother. Let me make it." They stared at each other. Cole could hear horses in the distance, getting closer, could feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like a physical force. "I can't lose you too," Cole whispered. You're not losing me. I'll always be with you." Ethan pressed his revolver into Cole's hand. "Now ride like hell, and don't look back." Cole's vision blurred. He wanted to argue, to refuse, to grab his brother and drag him onto a horse by force if necessary. But Ethan's face was set with a terrible determination. He'd made his choice. The only thing Cole could do was honor it. "I love you," Cole said, his voice breaking. "I love you too." Ethan gave him a gentle shove. "Now go. Make it count." Cole stumbled to his horse, mounted with hands that shook, turned the animal south. He looked back once. Ethan stood in the canyon, rifle in hand, facing north toward the coming thunder of hooves. He raised one hand in farewell. Then Cole rode, tears streaming down his face, abandoning his brother to buy a future he wasn't sure he deserved. Behind him, gunfire erupted. A single rifle against many. The sound chased him through the canyons, each shot a nail in his heart. He rode for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, eating nothing, the horse near collapse beneath him. He crossed into Colorado, then pushed west toward the Utah border, putting distance and terrain between himself and Montana. On the 4th day, holed up in a cave with the last of his water gone and exhaustion dragging at him like chains, Cole finally let himself feel it. The grief crashed over him in waves. His mother, his home, his brother, everything he'd ever loved, ripped away by men who saw land as profit and people as obstacles. He wept until he had nothing left. Then he slept, dreamless and dark. When he woke, something had changed. The grief was still there, a permanent weight in his chest, but it had hardened into something else, something cold and focused, purpose. Ethan had bought him a chance. Cole wouldn't waste it on revenge or death. He'd do exactly what his brother had told him to do. He'd live. He'd find Lena. He'd build a life worth dying for. But first, he had to survive. Cole spent 6 weeks moving like smoke through the territories, never staying in one place longer than a night, avoiding towns where possible, stealing what he needed to survive. His face was on wanted posters from Montana to New Mexico, the bounty climbing to $7,000, enough to make every drifter and desperate man look at strangers with calculating eyes. He grew a beard, let his hair grow long, stole clothes from a washing line that made him look like a ranch hand instead of an outlaw. The transformation was subtle but effective. In a land where thousands of men wore dust and denim, anonymity was just a matter of keeping your head down and your mouth shut. News of the Helena fire had spread like wildfire itself. The newspapers called it terrorism, an act of savage violence against civilization's march westward. The railroad offered rewards for any information leading to the capture of the Maddox brothers and their accomplices. But there was something else in those articles too, buried beneath the official condemnation. Whispers that the fire had destroyed evidence of land fraud, that certain families were quietly celebrating the loss of documents that proved their displacement had been illegal. Cole read every newspaper he could find, searching for news of Ethan. For 3 weeks, there was nothing. Then, in a Wyoming paper, he found it. The article was small, barely 2 paragraphs on the 4th page. It reported that Ethan Maddox had been killed in a shootout with federal marshals in the Montana Badlands. His body had been transported to Helena for identification. He died firing on lawmen, the article claimed, refusing to surrender even when offered clemency. Cole read it 3 times, the words blurring. Then he carefully tore out the article, folded it, and put it in his pocket next to the last letter his mother had written before she died. A letter he'd found in her dresser drawer the day before they'd fled the burning ranch. 2 pieces of paper, 2 ghosts. All that remained of his family. He was truly alone now. The realization should have broken him. Instead, it clarified everything. Ethan had bought him time. His mother had taught him to stand for something. Now it was up to Cole to decide what that something would be. He decided it would be Lena. Getting to her wouldn't be simple. Silver Creek was crawling with railroad agents and bounty hunters, all waiting for Cole Maddox to make the mistake of showing his face. But Cole had learned something in 2 years of running. Desperation made you clever, and love made you reckless. He needed both. The plan came together slowly as he worked his way north through back trails and forgotten roads. He couldn't just ride into Silver Creek and knock on Lena's door, but he could send a message, and he knew someone who might help him do it. Jack Holloway had gone to ground somewhere near the Dakota border. Cole spent 2 weeks tracking rumors and following hunches until he found the former rifleman working as a ranch hand outside Deadwood, using the name Jack Hill. They met in a canyon a mile from the ranch, both men armed, both men cautious. Jack looked older, harder, his shoulder wound healed, but leaving him with a slight hitch in his movement. "Heard about Ethan," Jack said without preamble. "I'm sorry." "He went out the way he wanted," Cole replied, though the words tasted like ash. "Fighting." "That's something, I guess." Jack studied him. "You look like hell." "Feel worse?" Cole dismounted, let his horse drink from a creek trickling through the rocks. "I need your help." "Figured as much. You wouldn't risk contact otherwise." "I need to get a message to Lena Cross. In Silver Creek." Jack's eyebrows rose. "That's suicide. Town's locked down tighter than a bank vault. Every stranger gets questioned. Every woman gets watched in case you try to make contact." "I know, that's why I'm not going myself." Understanding dawned on Jack's face. "You want me to go? You're not wanted. Changed your name, changed your life. You could ride in, deliver a message, ride out. No one would look twice." Jack was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risk. "What's the message?" Cole pulled a letter from his coat. He'd written it 3 times, crossed out more than he'd kept, trying to find words adequate for everything he needed to say. In the end, he'd settled for simple truth. "Give her this. Tell her where I am. Tell her—" He stopped, started again. "Tell her I'm done running. If she'll have me, I want to build a life, somewhere quiet, somewhere they'll never find us. And if she says no," Cole's jaw tightened, "then I disappear, become someone else, die alone in some dusty town where nobody knows my name." Jack took the letter, tucked it inside his shirt. "You really love her." "More than I thought I could love anything." Cole met his eyes. "More than revenge, more than justice, more than the goddamn railroad's blood on my hands." "That's quite a lot." "It is." Jack nodded slowly. "I'll do it. But Cole, if this goes wrong, if they catch me, I won't give you up. I'll eat a bullet before I tell them where you are." "I know, that's why I'm asking you." They shook hands, 2 men bound by shared loss and stubborn loyalty, and parted ways into different futures. Cole waited in an abandoned mining camp 30 miles south of Silver Creek, living in a collapsed supervisor's shack with holes in the roof and rats in the walls. He hunted jackrabbits, boiled coffee over fires he extinguished before dark, and counted days with marks scratched into a beam. It took Jack 2 weeks to return. Cole heard the horse approaching and had his rifle up before he recognized the rider. Jack looked exhausted, covered in trail dust, but his eyes held something that made Cole's heart kick against his ribs. Hope. "She got the letter," Jack said, dismounting stiffly. "Read it right there in front of me." Cried like her heart was breaking. "What did she say?" "She said yes." Cole's knees almost buckled. "Yes?" "She said she'd go anywhere with you, do anything, be anyone." Jack pulled another letter from his coat. "She wrote you back." Cole took it with shaking hands. Lena's handwriting was elegant despite the cheap paper, each letter formed with care. He read it twice, absorbing every word. She told him she'd been preparing for this since the night he'd climbed through her window, had sold the boarding house quietly to a cousin, converting everything to cash she could carry, had been waiting for word from him, praying he was alive, refusing to believe the newspaper reports that claimed he'd been killed in various shootouts across 3 territories. She told him she loved him, that she didn't care about his past, that she believed in the man he could become. And she told him where to meet her. "There's a stage that runs from Silver Creek to Cheyenne," Jack explained. "She'll be on it 3 days from now, gets into Rawlins around sunset. You meet her there, grab fresh horses, and ride west. By the time anyone figures out she's gone, you'll be in Utah." It was risky. The stage route was well-traveled, well-watched. But it was also public enough that Cole could blend in, just another drifter meeting someone off the coach. "Thank you," Cole said, the words inadequate for what Jack had risked. The rifleman shrugged. "You'd do the same for me." In a heartbeat. They spent that night swapping stories around a small fire, remembering the others who hadn't made it. Miguel had disappeared into Mexico, last anyone heard. Thomas had been caught in Colorado and hanged before his trial even concluded. The others, Sam Cross, Jim Cartwright, Raymond Polk, were already ghosts, their names added to the long list of men the frontier had consumed. "We were fools to think we could win," Jack said, staring into the flames. "Maybe," Cole agreed, "but we made them bleed, made them scared, even if just for a little while. That's something. Is it enough?" Cole thought about his mother bleeding on the porch, his brother making a last stand in a nameless canyon, all the loss and rage and futile violence. "No," he said quietly, "it'll never be enough. But it's all we had." They parted at dawn. Jack headed east, back to his new life and borrowed name. Cole rode west, toward Rawlins and a future he barely dared imagine. The town of Rawlins sat on the Union Pacific Line, a railroad town but not a Northern Pacific one. That distinction mattered. The wanted posters here were faded and few, the lawmen more concerned with drunk cowboys than fugitive outlaws from Montana. Cole arrived a day early, taking a room in a boarding house under the name James Carson, paying cash, keeping to himself. He shaved his beard down to a mustache, bought new clothes that made him look like a merchant instead of a drifter. The transformation was superficial but effective. The day Lena was due to arrive, Cole spent the morning walking the town, memorizing exits and blind spots, identifying which men carried themselves like lawmen and which like ordinary citizens. Old habits died hard. The stage was due at 6. Cole positioned himself in a saloon across from the depot, nursing a whiskey he didn't drink, watching the street through dusty windows. 5:30 came and went. Then 6. Then 6:15. The stage rolled in at 6:23, wheels caked with mud, horses lathered and tired. The driver climbed down, opened the door, helped out the passengers, an old man with a cane, a woman with 3 children, a drummer carrying sample cases. No Lena. Cole's heart sank into his boots. He waited, watching as the other passengers dispersed, as the driver started unhitching the horses. She wasn't coming. Something had gone wrong. She'd been caught, or changed her mind, or... Then he saw her. She'd been inside the depot, not on the stage. Must have come in on an earlier coach, waited inside where it was safe. She emerged now, carrying a single carpet bag, wearing a traveling dress of dark blue that made her hair shine like copper in the evening light. Their eyes met across the street. Cole put money on the bar and walked out. Crossed the dusty road like a man walking to his own wedding. Reached her as she stepped onto the boardwalk. "James Carson," she said, reading the name he'd used to sign the hotel register in his letter. "It suits you." "Sarah Carson," he replied, using the name she'd chosen for herself. "You're more beautiful than I remembered. You're a terrible liar." "I know." Then she was in his arms, the carpet bag forgotten on the boards, her face pressed against his chest, and he was holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "I was so scared you wouldn't come," she whispered. "I'd cross hell to get to you." "You did." They stood there for a moment that stretched into eternity, 2 people finding each other in the wreckage of everything else, the world reduced to heartbeats and breath, and the knowledge that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Then Cole picked up her bag and they walked to the livery, bought 2 horses with cash Lena had brought, and rode west as the sun painted the sky the color of old blood. They traveled for 3 weeks, moving slowly, carefully, staying off main roads. Cole taught Lena to shoot, to track, to read the land the way he'd learned as a boy. She taught him to hope again, to imagine a future measured in years instead of days. They crossed into Utah, then Nevada, working their way toward California and the anonymity of its growing cities. Along the way, they stayed in small towns where nobody asked questions, worked odd jobs for cash, slept under stars so bright it hurt to look at them. And slowly, day by day, Cole Maddox died. In his place emerged James Carson, a rancher who'd sold his spread in Wyoming and was looking to start fresh. He was quieter than Cole had been, more careful, but there was a peace in him that the outlaw had never known. Sarah Carson was a widow, her first husband lost to typhoid, now seeking a new beginning with a good man who'd courted her with patient devotion. She smiled more than Lena had, laughed easier, as if the weight she'd carried in Montana had lifted the moment she crossed into a new life. They were lies, but lies told often enough lived fully enough, had a way of becoming truth. In Sacramento, they married. A simple ceremony in a judge's office, 2 witnesses pulled from the street, vows spoken with conviction that transcended the false names. Cole slipped a gold band on Lena's finger, and something in his chest unknotted for the first time in 3 years. "I love you, Sarah Carson," he said, meaning every word, even if the name was fiction. "I love you, James," she replied, her eyes bright with tears that were entirely real. They found a small ranch 40 miles outside Sacramento, 100 acres of grass and oak trees with a creek running through it. The previous owner had died with no heirs, and the bank was eager to sell. Cole paid cash, money he'd saved from the railroad robberies, blood money transformed into a future. They spent the summer fixing up the place. Cole repaired fences and rebuilt the barn while Lena planted a garden and hung curtains in the windows. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, building something neither had dared hope for. Peace. On warm evenings, they sat on the porch, a porch Cole had built with his own hands, using skills his father had taught him, and watched the sun set over land that was theirs by honest purchase. Sometimes Lena would rest her head on his shoulder, and he'd wrap an arm around her, and the silence between them would be fuller than any words. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked one night. "To Montana?" "To who you were?" Cole considered. "Every day. But then I remember what it cost, who I lost, and I think maybe the best way to honor them is to become something better than what I was." "You were always good, Cole, even when you were doing bad things. Cole Maddox is dead. James Carson is better." She turned to look at him, her face serious in the fading light. "You can't run from yourself forever." "I'm not running. I'm choosing." He touched her cheek. "I'm choosing you, this life, a future where our children don't have to know their father was wanted for murder." Lena's hand went to her stomach, an unconscious gesture that made Cole's breath catch. "Are you?" "I think so. It's early, but—" She smiled, tentative and hopeful. "I think so." The news should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like absolution, a chance to do what his own father had done, build something worth protecting, raise a child who'd never know hunger or fear or the sound of their home burning. "Then we'll make this work," Cole said fiercely, "whatever it takes." And for 8 months, it did work. Lena's pregnancy progressed. Her belly swelled with new life while Cole built a cradle from oak wood, carved with the same careful attention his father had used, his brother had used. The ranch prospered modestly, enough cattle to sell, enough crops to sustain them. They made friends with neighboring families, attended barn dances, became part of a community. James and Sarah Carson were well-liked, respected, trusted. Cole Maddox was a ghost, a legend whispered about in territories far away, a cautionary tale parents used to frighten children into obedience. The baby came in April, a daughter with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Catherine, after the grandmother she'd never know. Lena cried when Cole suggested it, and he held both his girls in his arms and felt something he hadn't felt since he was a boy on his family's ranch. Home. For 2 years, they lived in that grace. Catherine grew into a laughing toddler who chased chickens and helped her father feed the horses. Lena thrived, the boarding house keeper becoming a rancher's wife, the transformation so complete that sometimes Cole wondered if Lena Cross had ever existed at all. They didn't talk about Montana, didn't talk about what they'd left behind. The past was a locked room, and they'd thrown away the key. But the past had keys of its own. The man who arrived at their ranch on a Tuesday in June looked like any other drifter, dusty, travel-worn, leading a tired horse. Cole was mending fence when he spotted the rider and felt a prickle of unease that had nothing to do with reason. "Can I help you?" Cole called, straightening, his hand instinctively checking for the pistol he'd worn every day for 3 years but had stopped carrying a year ago. The man dismounted slowly, as if his body hurt. He was older than Cole, maybe 40, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. "Looking for work," the man said. "Heard you might need a ranch hand." Cole hadn't advertised for help, hadn't mentioned it to anyone. The lie was polite but obvious. "Who told you that?" "Just heard around Sacramento." The man's eyes flicked to the house, where Lena was hanging laundry with Catherine playing nearby. Nice family you got there, Mr. Carson. The use of the name sent ice down Cole's spine. I'm not hiring, sorry. That's a shame. The man pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Because I rode a long way to find you. He unfolded it, a wanted poster. Faded, 3 years old, but unmistakable. Cole Maddox. $5,000 reward. Cole's hand moved toward where his gun should have been, found nothing. The man saw the movement and smiled without humor. I'm not here to collect the bounty. Then why are you here? Name's William Cross. Sam Cross was my brother. The name hit Cole like a fist. Sam Cross. The blacksmith from Silver Creek. Lena's brother. Dead in the canyon during the failed train robbery. You're lying, Cole said, though he could see the resemblance now. Something in the jaw, the set of the eyes. I'm not. And I know who you are, what you did, why my sister ran away. William's voice was hard but controlled. I've spent 2 years tracking you, following rumors, bribing clerks, checking marriage records in every courthouse from Montana to California. Cole's mind raced. What do you want? I want to know if you're worth what she gave up, worth what Sam died for. They stared at each other across 10 feet of dusty earth. Cole could see Lena in his peripheral vision, frozen by the wash line, her hand shading her eyes, too far away to hear but close enough to sense trouble. Your brother was a good man, Cole said quietly. He died because I asked him to help me fight something bigger than both of us. I'd take it back if I could. Would you? Would you really? William's voice was bitter. Or would you do it all over again because that's who you are? An outlaw. A killer. I was. I'm not anymore. People don't change, not really. Then why are you here? If you're so sure I'm still the same man, why not just collect the bounty and be done with it? William's face worked. Because Lena wrote to me. Sent a letter a year ago explaining everything, telling me she was happy, begging me to let it go. He swallowed hard. She's the only family I got left. And if she loves you, if she chose this life, then I figure I owe it to her to see if you deserve it. Cole understood then. This wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about a brother's love, twisted by grief into something sharp and desperate. Come have dinner with us, Cole said. Meet my daughter. Talk to Lena. See for yourself what kind of life we've built. And if I decide you don't deserve it, then I'll leave tonight. Disappear so they can stay safe. William studied him for a long moment. You do that? Give up everything? To protect them? Without hesitation. Something shifted in William's expression. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of understanding. All right, he said finally. I'll stay for dinner. That evening was tense and strange. Lena cried when she saw her brother, held him like she'd never let go, then hit him hard enough to bruise for scaring her. William held Catherine awkwardly, clearly unused to children, but something in his eyes softened when the girl laughed and grabbed his nose. They ate at the table Cole had built, food Lena had cooked, and talked carefully around everything important. William told stories about Silver Creek, about mutual friends and small dramas. Lena caught him up on her life, editing carefully, presenting a version scrubbed clean of outlaws and wanted posters. Cole mostly listened, watching William watch him, knowing he was being evaluated with every word, every gesture. After dinner, after Lena put Catherine to bed, the three of them sat on the porch in the cooling evening. William smoked a cigarette staring at the darkening hills. I hated you, he said finally. For 2 years I hated you, blamed you for Sam's death, for Lena running away, for everything. You had the right, Cole replied. Maybe. But sitting here, seeing this? William gestured at the ranch, the house, the life they'd built. Sam would have liked this. He always talked about getting his own place, raising horses, growing old somewhere quiet. He deserved that chance. We all did, but that's not the world we got. William looked at Cole. I'm not going to turn you in, and I'm not going to tell anyone where you are, but I need you to promise me something. Name it. You keep her safe. You give my niece a good life. And you never, never go back to being what you were. Cole met his eyes. I swear it. William nodded slowly. He finished his cigarette, ground it under his heel, and stood. I'll be gone in the morning. You could stay, Lena said softly. We have room. You could help Cole with the ranch. For a moment, William looked tempted. Then he shook his head. I got my own ghost to outrun. But maybe I'll come back. Someday. When enough time has passed that I can look at him without seeing Sam dying. He left at dawn, as promised. Cole watched him ride away, disappearing into the morning mist, carrying secrets that could destroy everything. But he didn't think William would talk. The man had seen what Cole had seen, that some prices were too high, some vengeances too costly, that the only way to honor the dead was to let the living be happy. Life returned to normal after that, or as normal as it could be when you were living under a borrowed name. Cole threw himself into the ranch work, expanding the herd, improving the land. Lena taught Catherine her letters. They went to church on Sundays, not because Cole believed, but because it was what James Carson would do. The charade became second nature. Months passed, then a year, then another. Catherine turned 4, then 5. Cole's hair started showing gray at the temples. Lena's laugh lines deepened. They were getting older together, building a history that had nothing to do with railroads or revenge. And Cole began to believe they might actually get away with it. The belief lasted exactly 5 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Cole was in Sacramento buying lumber when he saw the poster. It was tacked to a telegraph pole outside the general store, fresh ink still sharp against cheap paper. He wouldn't have noticed it except that a gust of wind lifted one corner, drawing his eye. His own face stared back at him. Not the old wanted poster. He'd seen those gradually disappear over the years, replaced by newer criminals, fresher outrages. This was different. This was a historical notice, part of a series the railroad was publishing to commemorate the completion of their transcontinental expansion. The Maddox brothers, terrorists who threatened progress. The article beneath the sketch recounted a sanitized version of events. It painted Cole and Ethan as violent anarchists who'd murdered innocent people and destroyed property in a misguided crusade against civilization itself. It mentioned the Helena fire, the train robberies, the reign of terror they'd inflicted on Montana. And at the bottom, in smaller print, though both brothers perished resisting arrest, their legacy serves as a reminder of the cost of lawlessness in our great nation's expansion. Cole's hands shook as he read it. Both brothers perished. They thought he was dead. For 5 years, they'd thought he was dead, and he'd never known it. He should have felt relief, should have felt safe. Instead, all he felt was a creeping dread that something had shifted, some balance disturbed. He bought his lumber and rode home faster than necessary, his mind churning. The poster itself meant nothing. It was historical curiosity, not an active manhunt. But it meant the railroad was thinking about the Maddox brothers again, remembering, commemorating, and memories had a way of attracting attention. When he got home, Lena was teaching Catherine arithmetic at the kitchen table, patient, despite their daughter's wandering attention. The domestic scene steadied him. This was real. The ranch, his family, the life they'd built, that was real. The past was just ghosts on cheap paper. "You're back early," Lena said, looking up with a smile that faltered when she saw his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just missed you both." He kissed her forehead, ruffled Catherine's hair. "How's the arithmetic coming?" "Boring," Catherine announced, 6 years old and already opinionated. "Can I go play with the kittens?" "Finish your sums first." His daughter groaned dramatically but bent back to her slate. Cole caught Lena's eye and tilted his head toward the door. She followed him outside, concern etched in the lines around her eyes. "What happened?" she asked quietly. He told her about the poster, watched her face go through the same progression of emotions he'd felt. Surprise, relief, then that same creeping unease. "We're supposed to be dead," she said. "That's good, isn't it?" "Should be. But it means they're talking about us again, writing articles. People remember stories like ours." 5 years have passed, Cole. We've built a whole life here. Nobody's looking for dead men." "I know, you're right." He pulled her close, breathed in the scent of her hair, lavender soap and sunshine. "I'm probably just being paranoid." "You're allowed to be paranoid. It's kept us alive this long." They stood there on the porch as the afternoon shadows lengthened, holding each other against fears that had no name, no face, no substance beyond the whisper of instinct. The first real sign came 2 weeks later. Cole was at the feed store in town when he noticed a man watching him. Tall, lean, wearing a city suit that stood out among the farmers and ranchers. The man didn't approach, didn't speak, just watched with the focused intensity of someone comparing a face to a memory. Cole finished his business quickly and left. When he glanced back, the man was gone. He told himself it was nothing, told himself he was seeing threats where none existed. But he started carrying his pistol again, hidden under his coat. Started paying attention to strangers in town, to unfamiliar horses on the road past their ranch. Lena noticed but said nothing. She just held him tighter at night, as if proximity could ward off whatever was coming. The second sign was harder to dismiss. A rider appeared at their ranch 3 days after the incident in town. He was young, maybe 20, with nervous eyes and hands that fidgeted with his reins. Cole met him in the yard, Catherine playing behind him with a doll Lena had sewn. "Help you?" Cole asked, his tone friendly, but his body positioned between the stranger and his daughter. "You James Carson?" "I am." The young man's eyes flicked to Catherine, then back. "I got a message for you. From a friend." "What friend?" "Didn't give a name. Just said to tell you that Sacramento ain't as far from Montana as you think. Said you'd understand." Ice flooded Cole's veins. "Who sent you?" "Big fellow. Older. Had a badge, but he didn't flash it official-like. Paid me $5 to ride out here and deliver that message." The kid shifted uncomfortably. "That's all I know, mister. I don't want no trouble." "You're not in trouble, but do me a favor. Forget you were here." "Yes, sir." The kid wheeled his horse and rode off like the devil was chasing him. Cole stood in the yard long after the dust settled, his mind racing. Someone new. Someone from Montana. Someone with a badge. Someone who'd tracked them across half the country in 5 years of careful hiding. Lena appeared on the porch, Catherine on her hip. Who was that? Nobody, just someone asking for directions. She saw through the lie immediately. "Cole, we need to talk. Tonight, after Catherine's asleep." The conversation that night was the hardest they'd had since fleeing Montana. Cole told Lena everything, the man in town, the messenger, his growing certainty that their past was catching up to them. "We could run," Lena said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Sell the ranch. Head to Oregon or Washington. Start over again. And in 5 more years, when someone else finds us, when Catherine's 11 and asking why we keep moving?" Cole shook his head. "I'm tired of running, Lena, and I'm tired of looking over my shoulder." "So what do we do?" "We find out who knows and what they want. Then we deal with it." "Deal with it how?" Cole had no answer for that. The old Cole, the outlaw, would have solved it with a gun and a shallow grave. But that man was supposed to be dead. James Carson didn't murder people who threatened his peace. But James Carson was a fiction, and fictions couldn't protect his family. The answer came to him 3 days later, standing in his barn and staring at the cradle he'd built for Catherine. The cradle that now held feed sacks because his daughter had outgrown it. He'd built this life with his hands, built it on lies, yes, but also on hope and love and the stubborn refusal to let his past define his future. Maybe it was time to stop running from that past. Maybe it was time to face it. He rode into Sacramento the next morning, told Lena he was meeting with a cattle buyer. Instead, he went to the marshal's office. The marshal was a barrel-chested man named Tom Garrett, 50 years old and weathered by decades of frontier law enforcement. He looked up when Cole entered, his expression professionally neutral. "Help you?" "I'm looking for information about a federal marshal. Someone from Montana might be in the area asking questions." Garrett's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why would you be looking for a federal marshal, Mr. Carson? James Carson. I run a ranch outside town." "I know who you are. What I don't know is why you're here." Cole took a breath. This was the moment, the choice between continuing the lie or gambling everything on the truth. "Because I think he's looking for me." "And why would a marshal be looking for you?" "That's what I'm trying to find out." Garrett leaned back in his chair, studying Cole with cop's eyes that had seen too many lies to be easily fooled. "You in some kind of trouble, Mr. Carson?" "Not currently, but I might have been. Once." "Once," Garrett repeated. "That's a careful word." "It's an honest one." They stared at each other across the scarred desk. Finally, Garrett sighed and pulled a folder from a drawer. He opened it, scanned the contents, then looked up. Frank Kellerman, federal marshal out of Montana. He's been in Sacramento for 2 weeks, asking questions, showing old wanted posters to anyone who'll look. Garrett's voice was carefully neutral. You know him? Cole's jaw tightened. Kellerman. The man who'd killed his mother. The man who'd set the trap that killed his brother. The man Cole had spent 5 years trying to forget. We've met. I see. Garrett closed the folder. He came here 3 days ago. Asked if I knew anyone matching the description of Cole Maddox. I told him Cole Maddox died in the Montana Badlands 5 years ago. Official reports confirm it. What did he say to that? Said he has reason to believe the reports were wrong. Said he's tracked Cole Maddox to California. Said he'd pay good money for confirmation. Cole's hands clenched into fists. Are you going to give it to him? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. That depends. On what? On whether Cole Maddox deserves to stay dead. The question hung in the air like smoke. Cole thought about everything he'd done. The violence, the theft, the men he'd killed. Thought about everything he'd lost. Everything he'd built since. I can't speak for Cole Maddox, he said quietly. That man died in Montana. But James Carson is a good man, a husband, a father. He pays his taxes, treats his neighbors right, and just wants to live in peace. That's a nice story, but it doesn't answer my question. Then here's your answer. Cole Maddox was a product of a corrupt system that murdered his family and stole his land. He fought back the only way he knew how. Was it right? Probably not. Was it justified? Cole's eyes were hard. Ask the families who got their money back from those railroad shipments. Ask the settlers who kept their land because the Helena fire destroyed the fraudulent seizure orders. Then decide if he deserves to stay dead. Garrett studied him for a long time. Then he stood, walked to the window, looked out at the street. I fought in the war, he said finally. Saw things that would turn your hair white. Came home to a country that pretended none of it happened. Pretended the reasons we fought didn't matter anymore. He turned back. I don't have much love for railroads, Mr. Carson, or for men who hide behind badges to do dirty work. Is that a yes? That's a warning. Kellerman's not giving up. He's convinced you're alive and he's got the resources to prove it. Sooner or later he'll find something, a witness, a record, a mistake you made. So I should run. You should decide what you're willing to sacrifice to keep your secret, because that man wants you dead or in chains, and he won't stop until he gets one or the other. Cole left the marshal's office with more questions than answers. Kellerman was here. Kellerman was hunting. And eventually, Kellerman would find him. Unless Cole found him first. The thought crystallized as he rode home. He'd spent 5 years hiding, 5 years pretending, 5 years hoping the past would stay buried. But it hadn't. It never would. Some debts demanded payment. Some ghosts refused to rest. Maybe it was time to settle accounts. Lena knew something had changed the moment he walked through the door. She set down the shirt she was mending and stood, searching his face. You have that look, she said. What look? The one you had in Montana, right before you do something dangerous and stupid. Despite everything, Cole smiled. I'm not going to do anything stupid. But dangerous? Maybe. She crossed to him, took his hands. Tell me. He told her about Kellerman, about the conversation with Garrett, about the choice that was really no choice at all. Run forever, or face the man who destroyed his family. If you go after him, you become the thing they said you were, Lena said, her voice shaking. An outlaw, a killer. I'm already those things. I've just been pretending otherwise. No, you were those things. Now you're a father. My husband, James Carson. James Carson is a ghost. Cole Maddox is real, and he has unfinished business. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I can't lose you. Catherine can't lose you. You won't. I promise. You can't promise that. She was right, and they both knew it. But some promises were made to be kept, even if they couldn't be guaranteed. Cole spent the next week preparing. He cleaned his guns, checked his ammunition, practiced draws he hadn't made in years. His hands remembered what his mind had tried to forget. The weight of the weapon, the pull of the trigger, the cold calculation of violence. Lena watched him transform back into the man she'd first met in Montana, and it broke something in her. She didn't argue anymore, didn't plead. She just held him at night and tried to memorize the feel of him, as if her touch could keep him tethered to this life. Catherine noticed the tension but didn't understand it. She asked why Papa was sad, why Mama cried. Lena told her everything was fine, told her lies that neither of them believed. The confrontation came on a Tuesday. Cole rode into Sacramento alone, wearing clothes that belonged to neither James Carson nor Cole Maddox, but to some hybrid creature born of necessity. He'd sent word through Garrett, told Kellerman where to find him, when to be there. The meeting place was an abandoned warehouse by the river, far enough from town that gunfire wouldn't draw immediate attention. Cole arrived first, positioned himself where he could see all the entrances, and waited. Kellerman came at noon, riding alone as agreed. He was older than Cole remembered, gray threading through his hair, new lines around his mouth. But his eyes were the same, cold and calculating, the eyes of a man who'd killed without remorse and slept soundly after. They faced each other across 20 feet of dusty floor, two men carrying 5 years of history and hate. "You're supposed to be dead," Kellerman said conversationally. "So I've heard." "I knew it was a lie. Knew it in my bones. Men like you don't die easy." "Men like me?" Cole's voice was flat. "What kind of man is that?" "The kind who can't let go, can't move on, can't stop fighting even when the fight's over." "The fight's not over while you're still breathing." Kellerman smiled without warmth. "There it is. The Cole Maddox I remember. I was starting to think 5 years of playing farmer had softened you. I'm not here to trade insults. You want something. What is it?" "Justice." "You murdered my mother, killed my brother, stole my land. Don't talk to me about justice." "Your mother fired on federal officers. Your brother died resisting arrest. As for your land, eminent domain is legal, Maddox. You just didn't like the law. The law was bought and paid for by railroad money. Maybe, probably, but it was still the law." Kellerman's hand drifted toward his gun. "You broke it, killed a deputy marshal, burned property, terrorized innocent people. That's not fighting for justice. That's just revenge. Call it what you want. I called it survival. And now? What do you call it now?" Cole thought about Lena, about Catherine, about the life he'd built from the ashes of everything he'd lost. "Now I call it protecting what's mine." "The woman and the kid," Kellerman nodded. "I know about them. Lena Cross. Daughter named Catherine. Nice ranch outside town. Very domestic." Rage flooded Cole's veins, hot and dangerous. "You go anywhere near them. Relax. I'm not interested in your family. I'm interested in you." Kellerman's smile widened. "See, I've got a choice to make. I can arrest you, drag you back to Montana, hang you for murder. That's option one. Or I can kill you right here, right now. Claim you drew on me. Self-defense, clean and simple." "Why tell me this? Why not just do it?" "Professional courtesy. You deserve to know how you're going to die." They stared at each other. Cole's hand was inches from his pistol. Kellerman's was the same. Both men knew that whoever drew first would probably live, and the other would probably die. "You know what the funny thing is?" Kellerman said. "I don't even hate you. You were just doing what you thought was right, fighting for your family, your land. I respect that, but I've got a job to do, and that job is bringing you in. Then do your job." "I intend to." Kellerman's hand moved. Cole moved faster. 2 shots, so close together they sounded like one. Thunder in the enclosed space, echoing off brick walls and empty air. Kellerman staggered back, hand pressed to his chest, blood welling between his fingers. His gun clattered to the floor. He looked down at the wound, then up at Cole with something like surprise. "Fast," he gasped. "Always. Heard you were fast." Cole's gun was still raised, still aimed, his hand steady despite the roaring in his ears. "I gave you a choice. You could have walked away." "No, I couldn't." Kellerman's legs gave out. He sat heavily, back against a support beam. "Badge, don't let you walk away. The badge didn't pull that trigger, you did. Same difference." Blood stained his shirt, spreading. You're still a killer, Maddox. Fancy ranch, pretty wife. Doesn't change that. I know what I am. Good. Kellerman coughed, red flecking his lips. Because they'll come. More marshals, more hunters. Kill me. And you just painted a target on your back. Cole lowered his gun, walked forward, stood over the dying man. Maybe. But you won't be there to see it. Kellerman laughed, a wet, painful sound. Your mother, she put up a hell of a fight. You got that from her. She was worth 10 of you. Won't argue that. His breathing was shallow now, labored. Do me a favor? Why would I do you any favors? Because you're not as much of a bastard as you pretend. Kellerman's eyes were glazing. Tell people I died clean, facing you, not on my back. Cole understood. Even now, even dying, the man wanted his legend preserved, wanted to die like a lawman instead of a hired gun. I'll tell them you died with your boots on, Cole said quietly. That's all I... Kellerman's voice trailed off. His eyes went distant, then still. Cole stood there for a long moment, looking down at the body. 5 years of running, 5 years of hiding, and it came down to this. 2 men in an abandoned warehouse settling debts with bullets. He should have felt triumph, should have felt vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired. He dragged the body outside, positioned it to look like a fair fight. Kellerman's gun near his hand, powder burns suggesting mutual combat. Then he rode to the marshal's office and told Garrett the truth, or a version close enough to pass. He called me out, Cole said. Said he wanted to settle things man to man. I tried to talk him down. He drew first. Garrett studied him with knowing eyes. That how it happened? Near enough. Witnesses? Just me and him. Convenient. Lucky, Cole corrected. Garrett was quiet for a long time. Finally he stood, strapped on his gun belt. Show me. They rode to the warehouse together. Garrett examined the scene with professional thoroughness, checked the positions, the powder burns, the trajectory of the bullets. He asked questions Cole answered carefully, threading truth and lies together until they formed something believable. Finally, Garrett straightened. Self-defense, clear as day. That's your official ruling? It is. But Mr. Carson? Garrett's eyes were hard. This is the last time, you understand? Kellerman was dirty, everyone knew it, but he was still a federal marshal. You kill another lawman, even in self-defense, and there won't be enough lies in the world to save you. I understand. I hope you do, because next time I won't be so accommodating. Cole rode home as the sun set, painting the hills the color of old blood. He thought about Kellerman dying on that warehouse floor, thought about all the death he'd caused, directly or otherwise. His mother, his brother, Sam Cross, Thomas Birch, Jim Cartwright, Raymond Polk, all the nameless railroad guards and deputy marshals and bounty hunters who'd gotten in the way. The cost of his war was measured in graves. Lena met him at the door. She searched his face, saw the answer before he spoke. It's done, he said. Is he dead? Yes. She should have asked how, should have demanded details. Instead, she just pulled him inside, into the warm light of their home, where Catherine was setting the table for dinner, oblivious to the violence that had secured her future. That night, lying in bed with Lena's head on his chest, Cole made a decision. Kellerman had been right about one thing. Killing him would bring more hunters. The railroad wouldn't let a federal marshal's death go unanswered, even if it was ruled self-defense, which meant the past wasn't done with him yet. But maybe, just maybe, he could be done with it. We're leaving, he told Lena in the darkness. She didn't ask where or why, just nodded against his chest and whispered, Okay. They spent 3 days preparing to leave, moving with the quiet efficiency of people who'd done this before. Cole sold the cattle to a neighbor at a loss, converted everything they owned into cash and portable goods. Lena packed their lives into trunks and saddlebags, choosing carefully what mattered and what could be abandoned. Catherine sensed the urgency but didn't understand it. She asked questions her parents couldn't answer honestly. Why were they leaving? Where were they going? Would she see her friends again? Lena held her daughter and lied with practiced ease, spinning stories about adventure and new opportunities, painting their flight as choice rather than necessity. On the third night, as Cole was loading the wagon, a rider approached. His hand went to his gun automatically before he recognized the silhouette. Marshal Garrett dismounted slowly, hands visible, movements deliberate. "Easy," he said. "I'm not here to cause trouble."
Then why are you here? Garrett looked at the packed wagon, the shuttered house, the signs of imminent departure.
"To warn you. Federal investigators arrived from Montana this afternoon. They're asking questions about Kellerman's death. About you." Cole's jaw tightened. "You told them it was self-defense." "I did, but they're not convinced. Or maybe they don't care. Either way, they'll be at your ranch by morning. We'll be gone by then." "I figured as much." Garrett pulled an envelope from his coat. "This came for you. Through official channels. From someone named Augustus Webb." Cole took the envelope, recognized the lawyer's handwriting. The man who'd tried to negotiate their surrender 5 years ago, who'd either betrayed them or been used by Barnhart. Cole had assumed Webb was dead or bought off. Apparently he was neither. "You gonna read it?" Garrett asked. Cole broke the seal. The letter was short, written in Webb's cramped hand. "Mr. Maddox, if you're reading this, then Kellerman found you and you survived. I apologize for my role in that failed surrender. I was coerced through threats to my family. I've spent 5 years gathering evidence of railroad corruption, including documents proving your mother's death was murder and your land seizure was fraudulent. I'm dying of consumption. These documents are my final act of conscience. They're deposited with the San Francisco Chronicle to be published upon my death or yours. If you're still alive, they might give you leverage. If you're dead, they'll at least tell the truth. Regards, A. Webb." Cole read it twice, his mind racing. Evidence, proof, the thing that could clear his name or get him killed trying to use it. "Good news?" Garrett asked. "Maybe. Or maybe just another way to die." Cole folded the letter. "Thank you for bringing this." "Don't thank me yet. Those investigators, they're not regular marshals. They're Pinkerton men. Railroad hired them specifically to close the Maddox case, and Pinkertons don't quit. I know what Pinkertons are." "Then you know running won't help. They'll follow you to Canada, Mexico, the ends of the earth. They're relentless." Garrett's voice was grave. "Your only chance is to end this. Permanently. How do you suggest I do that?" "You don't. You let me help you." Garrett held up a hand before Cole could interrupt. "I told you I don't have love for railroads. That's an understatement. They killed my brother in a construction accident and paid my family $50 like that settled the debt. So when I say I want to help, I mean it." Cole studied the marshal, weighing truth against potential trap. "What are you proposing?" "We bring those documents public. Make it a scandal too big to ignore. Railroad can hire all the Pinkertons they want, but they can't silence the press when it's already printing the story. They'll kill Webb. They'll kill anyone connected to this. Webb's already dying. He knows the risk. And you've been dead for 5 years already. What's one more death?" It was insane. It was dangerous. It was possibly the only way out. "I need to talk to my wife," Cole said. "Make it quick. Those investigators will be here at first light." Lena listened to Cole's explanation in the kitchen, her face pale in the lamplight. Catherine slept upstairs, innocent to the storm gathering around them. "If we do this," Lena said quietly, "we're gambling everything. Our lives, our daughter's future. For what? Vindication. Your name cleared? For the truth. For everyone the railroad destroyed. For my mother and Ethan and all the families who lost everything. They're gone, Cole. The truth won't bring them back. No, but it might stop it from happening to someone else." Lena closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet but determined. "What do you need me to do?" The plan came together quickly. Garrett would escort Cole to San Francisco under the pretense of transferring a prisoner. They'd meet with Webb, secure the documents, and deliver them to the Chronicle simultaneously with 3 other newspapers. By the time the railroad realized what was happening, the truth would be everywhere. "And if they try to stop us?" Cole asked. "Then we fight." Garrett's hand rested on his gun. "I'm tired of dirty men hiding behind badges. Time someone stood up to them." They left before dawn, Cole riding beside Garrett's horse, his hands symbolically tied, though the rope was loose enough to slip in seconds. Lena and Catherine would follow later, taking a different route to San Francisco, where they'd reunite after the documents were published. Or they'd never see each other again. Cole kissed them both before he left. Lena held him like she was memorizing the shape of him, and Catherine cried because Papa was going away. And neither of them could promise her he'd come back.
"I love you," Cole whispered to Lena, "no matter what happens." "I know, just come back to us." "I will, I swear it." Another promise he might not keep. The ride to San Francisco took 2 days. They passed Pinkerton agents on the road, hard men with harder eyes scanning every face, but they saw only a marshal transporting a prisoner, not worth a second glance. Webb lived in a boarding house in the Tenderloin district, 3 floors up in a room that smelled of medicine and decay. The lawyer was a ghost of himself, consumption eating him from the inside out. He coughed blood into a handkerchief as he shook Cole's hand. "You're alive," Webb rasped. "I'd started to think you were truly dead." "Close enough several times." "And Kellerman?" "Dead. For real this time." Webb nodded, unsurprised. He was a symptom, not the disease. The disease is still killing people. He pulled a metal lockbox from under his bed. "Everything's in here. Contracts proving the land seizures were fraudulent. Telegraph records showing coordination between railroad executives and territorial judges. Financial records of bribes paid to marshals and politicians. And testimonies. I've spent 5 years collecting testimonies from families they destroyed." Cole opened the box. The papers inside represented hundreds of hours of investigation, countless risks. "Why did you do this?" "Because I failed you, failed your brother, got greedy, let Barnhart bribe me, and good men died because of it." Webb coughed again, harsh and wet. "I can't undo that. But maybe I can make it mean something." Garrett examined the documents with professional thoroughness. "This is enough to indict half the railroad's executive board, enough to reopen land claims across 3 territories." "If it gets published," Webb said, "Barnhart has spies everywhere. He'll know we're here within hours." "Then we move fast." Garrett looked at Cole. "You ready for this?" Cole thought about his mother bleeding on the porch, his brother making a last stand, 5 years of running and hiding and pretending to be someone else. "I've been ready for 5 years." They divided the documents into 4 sets, each destined for a different newspaper. Garrett would take 1 set to the Chronicle. Cole would take another to the Examiner. Webb would send the 3rd via courier to the Sacramento Bee. The 4th would go to a lawyer in Portland, insurance in case everything else failed. "Once these hit the presses, there's no going back," Webb warned. "The railroad will come for all of us." "Let them come," Cole said. They split up outside the boarding house. Garrett headed north toward the Chronicle's offices. Cole turned south toward the Examiner. Webb remained behind, too weak to travel, awaiting whatever end his betrayal would bring. Cole made it 3 blocks before he realized he was being followed. 2 men, keeping pace 50 yards back. They weren't trying to hide. Wanted him to know they were there. Wanted him to run so they could claim he resisted. Cole didn't run. He kept walking, his hand inside his coat, gripping the pistol he'd carried for a decade. The documents were in a leather satchel slung across his back, suddenly feeling like they weighed 100 pounds. The Examiner's office was 6 blocks away. Cole walked 5 before the men made their move. They closed the distance fast, flanking him on both sides. The one on his left was older, grizzled, with a Pinkerton badge half visible under his coat. The one on his right was younger but meaner, with scarred knuckles and dead eyes. "Cole Maddox," the older one said conversationally. "You're under arrest for the murder of Federal Marshal Frank Kellerman." "That was self-defense, ruled legal by the Sacramento Marshal." "That ruling's under review. Until then, you're coming with us." "I don't think so." The younger Pinkerton's hand moved toward his gun. "That wasn't a request." People on the street were stopping, staring. Cole felt the weight of their attention,
knew that whatever happened next would have witnesses. Good. You work for the railroad, Cole said loudly, projecting his voice. The Northern Pacific Railroad. Same company that murdered my mother. Same company that's been stealing land and buying judges across Montana. You're not lawmen, you're hired killers with badges. Shut your mouth, the older Pinkerton hissed. Why? Afraid of the truth? Cole raised his voice further. I've got documents proving everything. Proof that the railroad's been committing fraud for years. That's what this is really about. They want me dead before I can tell the truth. The crowd was growing, more people stopping, listening, interested now. The younger Pinkerton grabbed for Cole's arm. Cole jerked back, his other hand coming out of his coat with the pistol, not aimed, just visible. Don't touch me. He's got a gun, the older Pinkerton shouted, drawing his own weapon. The street erupted in chaos, people screaming, running, the younger Pinkerton going for his pistol. Cole's mind calculating angles, distances, chances. Then a gunshot cracked from across the street. The younger Pinkerton spun, blood blooming on his shoulder. He dropped his gun, clutching the wound, his face shocked. Garrett stood in the doorway of a shop, his marshal's badge visible, his pistol smoking. Federal Marshal, Garrett called out. Drop your weapons. The older Pinkerton's face contorted with rage. You're interfering with official business. You're harassing a witness in a federal investigation. That's the official business. Garrett walked forward, gun steady. Now drop your weapon or I drop you. For a moment, the tension held. Then the older Pinkerton holstered his gun, raised his hands. His partner did the same, still bleeding, murder in his eyes. Garrett looked at Cole. Run. Cole ran. He heard shouting behind him, the Pinkertons yelling for help, Garrett's voice cutting through the chaos. But he didn't look back. Just ran, clutching the satchel, weaving through the crowded streets of San Francisco until his lungs burned and his bad legs screamed. The examiner's office was a 3-story building on Market Street. Cole burst through the front door, startling a clerk at the reception desk. I need to see the editor, Cole gasped. Now. It's urgent. Sir, you can't just... Cole dumped the documents on the desk. Tell him it's about the Northern Pacific Railroad. Tell him it's the biggest story of the decade. Tell him Cole Maddox is alive and ready to talk. The clerk's eyes went wide. He disappeared into the back offices. Minutes later, he returned with a thin man in his 40s, ink-stained fingers and skeptical eyes. I'm Charles Morton, managing editor, the man said. You claim to be Cole Maddox? I am. You're supposed to be dead. I've been supposed to be a lot of things. Dead, hanged, disappeared. Turns out I'm just persistent. Cole gestured to the documents. Everything's there. Proof that Northern Pacific murdered civilians, bribed judges, and stole land across Montana. Names, dates, financial records, enough to bring down the entire executive board. Morton leafed through the papers, his expression shifting from skepticism to shock to something like hunger, a newsman scenting the story of his career. Where did you get these? A lawyer named Augustus Webb. He's been investigating for 5 years. Can he verify this? If he's still alive, Railroad knows he's betrayed them. They've probably already sent men. Cole's voice was urgent. That's why you need to publish now, today, before they can stop you. These are serious allegations. They're facts, and people died for them. My mother, my brother, dozens of families driven from their land. You don't publish this, you're complicit in their deaths. Morton stared at him. Then he grabbed the documents. Come with me. They spent the next 6 hours in a frenzy of activity. Morton assembled his best reporters, set them to verifying the documents against public records. Telegraph operators sent wires to Montana, confirming names and dates. Artists sketched illustrations. Typesetters prepared the printing plates. Cole told his story, the real story, unvarnished and raw. The murder of his mother, the false charges, the years of running, the systematic corruption that had destroyed countless lives. As the sun set, Morton made his decision. We go to press in 2 hours, he said. Front page, full spread. Railroad empire built on blood and fraud. We'll run your account alongside the documentary evidence. It'll be on the streets by dawn. What about the railroad? They'll try to stop you. Let them try. We've got copies of everything locked in 3 separate locations. They'd have to burn down half of San Francisco to suppress this story. Cole felt something loosen in his chest. Relief. Vindication. the beginning of an ending. "Thank you," he said. Morton shook his hand. "Thank me by staying alive long enough to see this published. You're the only living witness to most of these events. If the railroad kills you before the paper hits the streets, it's just allegations without corroboration. I'll do my best. Do better than that. Hide. Find a hole and stay in it until morning. Then the whole city will know the truth, and killing you won't matter." Cole left the examiner's office as night fell. He needed to find Garrett, needed to know if Lena and Catherine had made it to the city safely, needed to... The attack came without warning. 3 men emerged from an alley, moving with professional coordination. Cole recognized the type. Not Pinkertons, something worse. Railroad security. The kind of men who didn't bother with arrests or legal pretense. He went for his gun, but the first man was on him, knocking it from his hand. A fist caught Cole in the ribs, driving the air from his lungs. He staggered, fought back, caught one attacker in the throat with an elbow. The man dropped, choking. The other 2 grabbed Cole, slammed him against a wall. One pressed a knife to his throat. "Silas Barnhart sends his regards," the man hissed. Barnhart, the railroad executive who'd orchestrated everything, still alive, still pulling strings, still desperate to silence the truth. "Kill me and it changes nothing," Cole gasped. "Stories already written, papers are already set. By morning, everyone will know what you did. Then you'll die knowing you failed, because that paper's never hitting the streets." The knife pressed harder. Cole felt blood trickle down his neck. His mind raced, searching for options, finding none. Then gunfire erupted. The men holding Cole jerked, released him. One fell immediately, a bullet in his back. The other turned, reaching for his weapon. Lena stood at the alley entrance, holding Cole's pistol with both hands, her face white but determined. She fired again. The second man went down. The third attacker, the one Cole had elbowed, scrambled to his feet and ran. Lena ran to Cole, her hands shaking. "Are you hurt? How did you... Where's Catherine?" "Safe. With the marshal. He told us where to find you." She touched the cut on his neck. "We need to get you out of here. We need to protect the newspaper. If they're trying to kill me, they'll try to stop the printing." Even as he said it, Cole smelled smoke. They ran toward the Examiner building, turned the corner, and saw flames licking from the ground floor windows. People were screaming, running. Fire bells rang in the distance. "No," Cole breathed. He rushed toward the building, but the heat drove him back. Through the flames, he could see printing equipment burning, paper catching like kindling. 5 years of investigation, Webb's dying effort, the truth itself going up in smoke. Lena grabbed his arm. "Cole, we have to go." "The documents. Our copies. Remember? Morton said they made copies." Cole's mind cleared. She was right. The originals were locked away. The Chronicle had their set. Webb had sent another to Sacramento. This was bad, but not catastrophic. Unless the railroad was hitting all the newspapers simultaneously. They found Garrett 3 blocks away, guarding Catherine in a safe house. The marshal's face was grim. "Chronicle's burning too," he said. "And someone tried to break into Webb's boarding house. They're making a coordinated strike." "Did the Sacramento set make it out?" "Don't know. Won't know until morning." Garrett looked at Cole. "We might have lost this one. They might have buried the truth." Cole sank into a chair, exhausted, bleeding, feeling the weight of failure pressing down. He'd come so close. Had the truth in his hands, and the railroad had snatched it away with fire and murder, the same tools they'd always used. Catherine climbed into his lap, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "Papa, you're bleeding," she said, her voice frightened. "I'm okay, sweetheart." "Are the bad men gone?" Cole looked at Lena, at Garrett, at the life he'd built and nearly lost. Not yet, but soon. He didn't know if he was lying. Morning came with ashes on the wind. The Examiner building was a smoking shell. The Chronicle's printing floor was destroyed. 2 reporters were dead, caught in the fires. And Augustus Webb's boarding house had burned to the ground with the lawyer inside, too sick to flee. Cole sat in the safe house, staring at nothing, feeling like he'd lost for the final time. The railroad had won. They always won. Money and power crushed truth every time. Then Garrett burst through the door, waving a newspaper. It published. he said breathlessly. The Sacramento Bee got their copy. They ran the story this morning. Cole grabbed the paper. There it was, front page. Railroad Empire, built on murder and fraud. Cole Maddox, alive, exposes Northern Pacific corruption. The story was everything Webb had documented, everything Cole had testified to. Names, dates, evidence. The systematic fraud that had displaced hundreds of families. The murder of Catherine Maddox. The bribed judges and corrupt marshals. All of it laid bare in black and white. And at the bottom, additional documentation provided by the late Augustus Webb, whose boarding house was burned by suspected railroad agents last night in an apparent attempt to silence him. It's everywhere, Garrett said. Sacramento, Portland, Denver. The story went out on telegraph wires. Every newspaper west of the Mississippi is picking it up. Cole read it 3 times, barely believing. They'd done it, despite the fires, despite the murders, despite everything the railroad threw at them. The truth was out. What happens now? Lena asked. Now? Garrett smiled grimly. Now the railroad burns instead of buildings. He was right. Over the next weeks, the scandal exploded. Federal investigators who weren't on the railroad's payroll descended on Montana. Grand juries were convened. Indictments flew. Silas Barnhart was arrested trying to flee to Mexico. A dozen judges resigned or were removed. The land seizures were declared fraudulent, and families began the slow process of reclaiming their stolen property. And Cole Maddox became something he'd never expected. A hero. The newspapers called him a fighter for justice, a man who'd stood against corruption when no one else would. They glossed over the violence, romanticized the outlawry, turned him into a frontier legend. He received letters from families thanking him for exposing the truth, from victims of the railroad's greed who'd thought they'd never see justice. It should have felt like vindication. Instead, it felt hollow, because the cost had been too high. His mother was still dead. Ethan was still dead. Webb and dozens of others had died to get the truth out. And Cole was a man without an identity, caught between the outlaw he'd been and the hero he supposedly was. The Sacramento marshal offered him clemency in exchange for testimony against the railroad executives. Cole agreed, spent 3 weeks in courtrooms recounting everything, watching wealthy men squirm as their empire crumbled. But the bounty stayed on his head. The murders he'd committed, even in self-defense, even in pursuit of justice, were still crimes. The legal system offered him a deal, 5 years in territorial prison, sentenced to be served in California where he'd built his new life. 5 years, Lena said when he told her. Catherine will be 11 when you get out. I know. Will you take it? Cole looked at his daughter playing with a doll in the corner, looked at his wife, the woman who'd risked everything to stand beside him, looked at the life they'd built from nothing. I don't have a choice. It's 5 years or running forever, and I'm done running. Then we'll wait, Lena said fiercely. 5 years, 10 years, whatever it takes. You'll come home to us. He did. Cole Maddox, legally James Carson, per the agreement that let him keep his new identity, entered the territorial prison in Folsom on a gray morning in November. He was 32 years old, scarred by bullets and time, carrying ghosts he'd never fully exorcise. The years inside were hard but survivable. He worked in the prison workshop, kept his head down, avoided trouble. Lena visited every month, bringing Catherine, letting him watch his daughter grow in frustrating snapshots. Catherine stopped understanding why Papa had to stay in the bad place, started asking questions they couldn't answer honestly. But she never forgot him. Neither did Lena. Cole was released on a spring morning 5 years later, walking out of the prison gates to find his family waiting. Catherine was 11, almost a stranger, but she ran to him anyway, and he caught her and held on like she might disappear. Lena looked older, so did he. But the love between them was unchanged, just weathered by time and patience. "Welcome home," she said. They returned to the ranch, which Lena had kept running with hired help and sheer determination. It was smaller than Cole remembered, more worn, but it was theirs. Cole spent his first weeks home relearning normalcy, how to wake up without guards watching, how to work land that he owned, how to be a father to a daughter who'd grown up in his absence. It wasn't easy. The years had created distance. Catherine was polite but wary, treating him like a guest in their home. Lena understood, gave them space to reconnect. Slowly, day by day, they rebuilt. Cole taught Catherine to ride the way his father had taught him. They worked the ranch together, father and daughter, building new memories to replace the lost years. And gradually, Catherine began calling him Papa again without prompting. The legend of Cole Maddox faded as newer stories replaced it. The railroad executives went to prison or fled. The seized lands were returned to their rightful owners, including the valley where the Maddox Ranch had stood. Someone bought it, rebuilt on the ashes, planted crops where Cole's mother had bled. Cole never went back. Some ghosts were better left undisturbed. He lived quietly, raising his daughter, loving his wife, working his land. When people asked about his limp, about the scars, about the shadows that sometimes crossed his face, he told them carefully edited truths. James Carson had a hard past, but he'd paid for it and moved on. Most people didn't push for more. William Cross visited 3 times over the years, the last time bringing a wife and child of his own. He and Cole never became friends, too much blood between them, but they achieved something like peace. Sam's death would always stand between them, but so would the knowledge that it had meant something. Cole's daughter grew into a strong young woman with her grandmother's fire and her mother's wisdom. She knew her father had been an outlaw once, had fought against injustice and paid a heavy price. She was proud of him in a way that made Cole's chest tight. When she was 18, she asked to visit her grandmother's grave. They traveled to Montana, to the valley Cole hadn't seen in 15 years. The ranch was unrecognizable, transformed by new owners. But the cemetery remained, a small plot under oak trees by the creek. Catherine Maddox's headstone was weathered but legible. Someone, Cole never learned who, had added a line beneath her name. She stood when others bowed. Cole and his daughter stood there together, 3 generations of Maddoxes, and Cole told her everything. The truth, unvarnished and complete. The murder, the rage, the violence and loss and desperate flight towards something better. "Do you regret it?" Catherine asked. "Fighting back?" Cole considered the question, the same one Lena had asked him 15 years earlier. His answer was the same. "I regret that it was necessary, but no, they needed to be fought. Even though it cost you everything?" "It didn't cost me everything. It cost me what I had to make room for what I needed." He put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Your grandmother fought for this land. Your uncle died buying me time to escape. All of it led to you. How could I regret that?" They visited Ethan's grave next, in a veteran's cemetery outside Helena. Someone had decided Ethan Maddox deserved to be remembered as more than an outlaw. His headstone read, "Ethan Maddox, brother, protector." He died so others could live. Cole stood there for a long time, silently telling his brother about the life he'd built, the daughter he'd raised, the peace he'd found, hoping somehow Ethan could hear, hoping he'd approve. When they returned to California, Cole was 61 years old. His hair was white, his body worn by decades of hard living. But his family was strong, his land was his own, and the nightmares had finally begun to fade. He died peacefully at 67, in his own bed, with Lena holding his hand. His last words were to tell her he loved her, to thank her for everything. Catherine was there too, now a woman of 30, with children of her own. She held her father's other hand and told him he'd been a good man, that he'd fought when fighting mattered, that she was proud to carry his name. Cole Maddox, James Carson, closed his eyes for the last time knowing he'd done it. He'd survived. He'd built something worth dying for. He'd turned rage into love, violence into family, and a legend into a legacy. The newspapers marked his passing with small obituaries that got the facts mostly wrong. They called him a frontier legend, a reformed outlaw, a symbol of the Wild West's complicated morality. Some painted him as a hero. Others called him a cautionary tale. Cole wouldn't have cared what they called him. He'd spent his life fighting for the truth, and the truth was simpler than any legend. He was a man who'd lost everything and built it back, who'd made terrible choices in impossible circumstances, who'd loved deeply and fought desperately and survived when survival seemed impossible. He was his mother's son, his brother's keeper, Lena's husband, Catherine's father, and in the end, that was enough. Years later, a historian researching the railroad scandals would ask Catherine about her father. What kind of man was Cole Maddox? How should history remember him? Catherine thought about the question carefully, remembering the scarred man who'd taught her to ride,
who'd worked alongside her in the fields, who'd held her when she cried and laughed at her jokes and told her she could be anything she wanted. He was human, she said finally. He made mistakes, hurt people, did things he regretted, but he also stood up when standing up mattered, protected the people he loved, tried to make things right even when it cost him everything. So was he a hero or a villain? Catherine smiled sadly. He was both, and neither. He was just a man trying to survive in a world that didn't care whether he lived or died. The railroad kept expanding, kept taking, kept destroying. Papa couldn't stop it, but he made them pay a price, made them afraid, even if just for a little while.
That's something. Is it enough? She thought about her grandmother bleeding on a porch she'd never seen, about the uncle who'd died before she was born, about her father's scars and nightmares and the weight he'd carried until the day he died.
No, she said quietly, it'll never be enough, but it's all we had.
The historian wrote it down, added it to the complicated record of a complicated man. And the legend of Cole Maddox, outlaw, murderer, fighter, father, lived on in the words of those who'd loved him and those who'd feared him, forever argued over, forever misunderstood. But somewhere in Montana, where Cottonwood Creek still bent around low hills, where grass grew over old foundations and new families built new dreams, the land remembered. It remembered the blood spilled in greed's name, the families destroyed, the justice bought and sold. And it remembered one man who'd said no, who'd fought back when fighting seemed futile, who'd stood when others bowed. The railroad kept expanding, its iron rails stretching across the continent, carrying prosperity and progress, and the weight of countless stolen futures. But it never quite erased his name. Cole Maddox had lived and died. And in the space between, he'd mattered. That was the only truth that counted.